Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. 3 minutes to 6 a.m. Streets are wet, and we aren't expecting more rain today. Well, at least not in the moment. Later this afternoon, we are expecting a little more, a high of 8 degrees. Welcome to your Thursday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And it is election remote number 2. We're on location. Our community studio today is the Tim Hortons in the Winnipeg West riding of Winnipeg. We're out at 3890 Grant Avenue, and we want to thank everyone for letting us in here early this morning. Big thanks to Nasli Sharma, who has allowed us to set up here. And we're on site with Donna Carrero and with Chloe Friesen back in the studio, May McKillop, Brad Lillies, and Abby Adeyemi. So good morning from our whole team. We are going to be talking about this riding and why, because it was very tight the last time around. In 2015, this riding voted Liberal for Doug Elson. In 2019, he lost to Conservative candidate Marty Morance, who is now the incumbent. In 2022, Marty Morance won again, but by just 460 votes. It was tight. So Marty Morance and Doug Elson are going to be joining us live here at the Tims to tell us why they believe they deserve to win this riding once again. Or, in Marty's case, keep the riding. So stay tuned. We're going to talk politics, Winnipeg West throughout the morning, and, of course, other news of the day. To get started with that, let's go to Heather Wells, who's in our news center with headlines.
Good morning. Well, healthcare support workers from Extendicare personal care homes in Manitoba were picketing in Winnipeg yesterday over their employer's third-party payroll system. Their union, CUPE, says workers have experienced compensation issues ever since Extendicare adopted the payroll system 2 years ago. A man is suing after Winnipeg police allegedly destroyed more than $50,000 worth of guns seized from his home. Andrew Krywaniska has filed a lawsuit against the city and Winnipeg police for unspecified damages. He claims police destroyed some of the guns despite a judge's order to send them to auction. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, in the first hour of the show, it's all in the family until this family heads to the ballot box. To begin, here in Winnipeg West, we'll hear from a father and a daughter who are going to vote in this riding, but they are supporting different parties. So what's their kitchen table sound like right now? We'll find out. In addition, in the first hour of the program, we were out earlier for a couple of hours earlier this week. I was talking to voters just at different locations in the riding about how they'll vote. So stay tuned.
You're going to be funny in another one. Laval, Quebec's Rachid Badouri has conquered the French comedy world, and now he's looking at taking on the English comedy world. He'll be here to tell you about translating his jokes and the differences between French comedy and English comedy.
I've changed my setups, less talking, get more to the punchlines.
Q with Tom Power, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. Canada's federal election campaign is revealing a sharp divide in the way each party deals with the media. Most have taken a traditional approach. Media outlets, including the CBC, pay to have their reporters travel on the same bus or plane as the leader. But the Conservative Party decided not to bring reporters along. And as Tom Perry reports, that's not the only hurdle reporters have had to overcome.
Canada first for a change.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Pierre Poilievre's campaign day usually starts with a speech unveiling some new policy, followed by a news conference.
Thank you very much. A very important question.
Poilievre usually takes just 4 questions, with Conservative Party staffers deciding which reporters get to ask.
Is that why you haven't got your security clearance?
That boiled over this week in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, when a reporter not handpicked by the party tried to shout a question.
Sorry, there's just a protester here. Go ahead.
It's a reporter trying to ask you a legitimate question.
David Coletto of Abacus Data isn't sure the Conservative strategy is working.
In this election, voters are increasingly looking for competence as one of the most important factors. And I think to demonstrate confidence, you have to have confidence that you can take any question that comes at you.
The Liberals, New Democrats, and Bloc Québécois all have reporters traveling on their campaigns with their news outlets footing the bill. Those reporters decide who asks questions, with the Liberals generally giving 15 to 20 minutes to national media and another 5 to local. It's added up to the other party leaders facing far more questions at their events than Poilievre, whose party vowed this would be one of the most accessible and transparent campaigns in recent memory. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Liberals and the NDP are fighting to win a seat, any seat in Saskatchewan. The leaders of both parties touched down in Saskatoon last night, their planes parked next to each other on the tarmac. As Ashley Burke reports, they threw events in a riding they're hoping to win.
We are in the Paris of the Prairies, thank God. This is amazing.
Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
Oh man, this is in some energy. We needed this energy.
Both rallying supporters in Saskatoon West within 2 kilometers of one another.
We got to send great Saskatchewan MPs to Ottawa, because let me tell you, I have lived in Ottawa a number of years and nothing happens in Ottawa.
The Liberals and NDP were both shut out of the province in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Now the parties are trying to change that and pick up Conservative seats.
Ottawa works best when one party doesn't have all the power. We've seen in our history the best things that have ever come out of our parliament have been when New Democrats have been there. Our universal health care, New Democrats.
Singh pitching the hope of a minority government by sending more NDP MPs to parliament. He's hoping to build on momentum that the NDP saw provincially in the fall election, as the Liberals try to solidify their strong support in polls across the Prairie provinces. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Saskatoon.
U.S. President Donald Trump is still waging a trade war, but instead of a broad one with tariffs targeting dozens of countries, Trump is now focused squarely on China. And this morning, Beijing is vowing to keep fighting back. A bitter trade dispute is shaping up between two superpowers. Patrick Falk has the latest on the Chinese government's response.
The warnings from China are consistent, if not repetitive. At a news briefing in Beijing today, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian reiterated that China didn't want to fight a trade war. But we will not fear when they come our way, he says. In a separate briefing, the Commerce Ministry acknowledged that the environment for trade was becoming increasingly challenging. But it also insisted the resilience of Chinese trade has not diminished. Markets in Asia rebounded strongly after the Trump administration offered a 90-day reprieve on tariffs against dozens of nations. Investors shrugged off uncertainty about how the fight between Washington and Beijing might play out, even as the U.S. notched its tariff rate against Chinese goods higher to 125%. And Goldman Sachs lowered its forecast for China's real gross domestic product growth from 4.5% to 4%. It says the substantial U.S. tariffs will significantly weigh on China's economy and labor market. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Singapore.
The EU says it will put its tariff retaliation on hold for 90 days to match Donald Trump's pause. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says she wants to give time for negotiations to work. European markets are responding with some relief this morning. London's FTSE opened up 6% higher, and Germany's DAX climbed 8% in early trading. In the Dominican Republic, hope more survivors will be found in the rubble of a collapsed nightclub is starting to fade. The head of emergency operations updated people keeping vigil for their loved ones last night. He says 184 people are now confirmed dead and 24 patients are still in hospital. There are dozens of people still waiting to hear something about their missing loved ones. We will get a better picture this morning on how Canadians are reacting to the Trump administration. Statistics Canada is due to release its report on cross-border travel. It is expected to show Canadians are avoiding trips to the U.S. in droves, and it's having an economic impact on popular destinations like Florida. Steve Futterman has that story.
70-year-old Laurie Fisher lives in Winnipeg, but has been coming to Florida every winter since he was 5.
What's going on now between Canada and the United States, from a Canadian point of view, is untenable.
Now he is going home. He sold his condo here in Clearwater and doesn't expect to come back.
I've talked to a lot of Canadians that have made the decision to leave.
And many who were thinking of coming are staying away.
Pretty large amount of Canadians are actually deciding to cancel their trips.
Robert Washington is a real estate broker in Tampa.
So I work with a lot of investors that own Airbnbs, One client said about 40% of his bookings were with Canadians. All of them canceled his trips.
All over Florida, businesses, especially hospitality businesses, are feeling the impact. In one spot, especially popular with Canadians.
Beautiful Dunedin, Florida, the site of the first spring training game of the Blue Jays.
In Dunedin, Canadians did show up for the Blue Jays preseason games, but the numbers seem to be smaller. And Dawn Daly, who runs a popular bar in Dunedin, says those that did show up went home very quickly when the games ended.
Yeah, I would say it was a significant drop-off over the past week. Usually people will stay around until after Easter, and it usually kind of tapers off slowly, but we felt a little bit of a significant drop just this past week.
The big question among those impacted is whether this is a one-year anomaly or possibly the new normal. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Clearwater, Florida.
The artist in residence at the University of Prince Edward Island has quit. Christopher Griffin's U.S.-themed painting is proving controversial on campus. As Wayne Thibodeau reports, it is a parody of the famed Washington crossing the Delaware.
When my country was threatened by the government of the United States of America, I felt I had to do something.
Christopher Griffin's painting is a group of lemmings in a boat carrying an American flag.
I chose lemmings because they have the mythology of producing mass suicide by jumping over a cliff. And it seemed to me that the government of the United States was self-inflicting wounds.
The college says it prompted complaints, including from American faculty members. Griffin says he was given two options: take down the controversial painting or leave. He decided to quit.
I offered to do a talk and to explain why I thought this painting was relevant and important, and they declined to do that.
Dominique Griffin is the dean of the Atlantic Veterinary College, where the artwork was on display.
We do not intend to censor his work. We did express that he was welcome to continue his work, but just that an institute of higher education, especially one that focuses on veterinary science and animal health, was not the right venue for
Christopher Griffin says he just wanted to stand up for his country. He says a university is the perfect place to have this discussion.
I'm quite disturbed by what is going on. I love this country, and I want to do what I can.
Griffin says he doesn't wish any ill will on the university or its administration. He says it's just too bad it had to end this way. Wayne Thibodeau, CBC News, Charlottetown.
This is one of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca. You can see that painting of the lemmings in the boat and other paintings by Christopher Griffin at cbcnews.ca. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
At Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And we are on location once again today in the riding of Winnipeg West. We're going to be hearing from candidates. We're going to be hearing from voters. So why have we chosen to be here? Well, because it was close in 2022. The incumbent Conservative, Marty Morance, won here, but by just 460 votes. We have a Liberal who will be facing him. Doug Elson, the candidate, facing him this time around, has previously held this seat in 2019. So maybe no surprise that voters aren't shy. They're talking to us about the cost of living, the environment, the relationship with the U.S. and LGBTQ plus rights. So we're going to get all of the comments from the listeners and the voters here in Winnipeg West on the show. We begin, though, with a father and daughter who vote here, but they do not support the same party. In addition, this hour on the show, selling Canadian, but are people buying it? We're going to look at the popularity of Patriotic merch when we chat with a marketing expert this hour on the show. And then at 10 to 7, with the federal election now really just around the corner, some Canadian farmers continue to feel the pressure from the new tariffs imposed by China and the ongoing trade uncertainty with the United States and the effect of the reciprocal tariffs. We're going to dive into how this is affecting them now that we're in mid-January. You might have heard some deep concerns from Manitoba producers earlier this month. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She joins us with other headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Brazilian man says he was forced to leave Canada after blowing the whistle on a Winnipegger illegally hiring foreign workers. Igor Santos says he gave authorities evidence he and others had been misled into working at a local construction site without permits. Santos was applying for a valid work permit last week when he was ordered out of the country. We'll hear more. And a recent surge in Canadian pride could soon be echoing through the Manitoba legislature. The opposition PCs said they are putting forward a motion today asking the House Rules Committee require O Canada be sung before every sitting of the Manitoba legislature. The anthem traditionally is sung at the start and end of each legislative session. More stories from Manitoba coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we're wondering what you think of that. That's a really good question to throw to people. So as you're hearing Heather's news this morning, you can always weigh in at 788-3205. Picking up the phone will be May McKillop, who's back in our control room with Abby Adeyemi, and Abby's here to walk down the weather. Hey, Abby, on the drive over, it was wet streets from last night. We're in a pocket where there's no rain right now, but we do actually have more possible, right?
Yeah, more possible this afternoon. However, let's just start with the cloudy conditions now. 2 degrees in Winnipeg and surrounding areas, and that's what we're seeing in most of the regions. We're expecting mainly cloudy skies today. We do have that good chance of drizzle or rain coming off and on this morning into the afternoon. Spotted some foggy conditions on my way in this morning. That would linger on, but it should clear as we get into the day, and we'll see temperatures climbing close to 9 degrees in most of the regions down south today. The winds are going to stay light mostly for the day, but we're still going to feel cool and damp. And then looking at all the regions down south from Morden all the way down to Dauphin, currently temperatures hovering around 3 degrees, partly cloudy conditions. Most areas will get close to 9 degrees as well. And then up north, we're seeing temperatures between -2 and -6 with cloudy conditions for most of the day. But for Winnipeg today, 2 degrees. Expect cloudy day, a good chance of light rain and drizzle, and high would get close to 9.
All right. Thanks very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe Friesen is here on location with me, and she's has one thing to report in the commute, even though we're early here. Hi, Chloe.
Hello, good morning. Archibald is closed in both directions from Du Moulin to La Vérendrye Street. You can use McTavish Street to detour as well. Probably, I think there's 2 cars in the drive-through here at Tim Hortons, so I guess that's traffic.
There'll be more
I see 2
later
in front of me, and there's I'm so excited. So stay tuned for. Oh no, now there's 3. Stay tuned for traffic tips from the Tim Hortons drive-through as well. And if you see anything out there on your commute that you would like to share with us, give us a call on the commuter line at 204-788-3093.
So I talked about voting patterns in this Winnipeg West riding as we opened the show, but I want to talk a little bit about where it actually is. So we're on Grant Avenue, 3890 at the Tim's here. This is like, you can imagine the strip mall. There's a Safeway in here. There's some food stores, a liquor store. You might know where we are if you're in Winnipeg. But I do want to place us in the province. This is a big riding. There's 651 square kilometers. There's voters that will vote from St. James, Charleswood, and into the arm of Headingley. And for the first time since the 2022 boundary redistribution, this was redrawn. So it's even bigger. So folks out listening this morning in the arm of Rosser, you also were voting in Winnipeg West, which you likely know because a lot of people got voting cards in the mail this week. Now, in just a few weeks, they'll decide who will take it. It is a Conservative incumbent who holds this riding. We're going to hear from him next hour. We also want to mention that today we will also hear live from the Liberal candidate here. Doug Elson is running for the Liberals. The Conservative incumbent is Marty Morance. We also have on the ballot for Winnipeg West candidates from the New Democratic Party and the Green Party. So we will hear more about what matters to voters here. I want to mention that we did extend invitations to all of the candidates to join us. Green Party candidate Dennis Biomi. There's also a Green candidate here, as mentioned. And NDP candidate Avery Selby are not available this morning. And they're previously, some of you have written to me already and said, isn't there a PPC candidate? We have learned this week the PPC candidate, in fact, is off the ballot. So officially, due to personal reasons. And so there are 4 people running here. We'll hear from 2 of them. So if you want to ask a question, you can join us in person or you can call the listener line at 788-3205. So Dean Joyce joined us already this morning. Dean Joyce came down to the Tims. He says he's voted for all the parties at one point in his life, but he told CBC he believes that everyone has a right to access a GP. And so this time around, he is supporting Doug Elson, and that is because Doug Elson is actually a doctor. So he says his experience and knowledge is needed and needs to be shared with others, and so he'll have the expertise to take on some of the healthcare issues that are important to Dean. So we talked to Dean this morning. Thank you so much, Dean. I know he grabbed his coffee and he headed off, but I know he's a listener, so maybe you're hearing some of your thoughts on the air here, Dean. And that works too. If you come on down and you don't have time to stay and get on mic with us, we'll pass along what you're thinking as we head into our election on the 28th. Well, let's talk to 2 more voters, or hear from them rather. It's all in the family for the Fikes family until they head to the ballot box. To start our show officially in Winnipeg West, we're going to hear from a father and daughter next who will vote in this riding, but they support different parties. They met up with me in studio last week. Well, up next on CBC, we have been exploring how different people vote. And we asked on Facebook, do you in your household vote a different way from a family member? And what's that like? What are those conversations like around the table? So we have in studio with us now an example of that, because a lot of you have been writing into us. 20-year-old Jamie Fikes is here, and she's here with her dad, Rick Fikes, who is not 20. Hi, Rick.
Hi.
Different generations, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you guys talk a lot of politics in your house?
Tons of politics, yeah.
Have you always?
Myself more than my family, just because that's a topic I've been interested in since I was in my teens.
Yeah. How about for you, Jamie? Are you someone that likes to get into a good political conversation with the family?
I mean, I only really started talking politics with my dad when I was like 15, 14-ish.
Yep.
My mom never was interested in that. So it's always been like me and dad going back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is interesting because this is your first federal vote, right? Being 20, so you missed the last one. How are you feeling about it? Are you excited about it? Are you tell me what that's like for you?
I'm kind of worried, I guess.
How come?
I'm not really, there are people I don't want to win, I'm concerned what Pierre Poilievre specifically will do for Canada.
Okay.
And, the whole Trump situation.
How are you framing this year's vote, Rick? How are you feeling about it?
Well, I've been a lifelong conservative, and I've been watching the direction that the right side of the aisle has been taking, and I've had some concerns, and I've decided to get more involved politically. Just that my voice and what I believe in is reflected in the CPC and the Manitoba PCs. So I'm watching this election and framing it, as you say, with current events down south, which I agree is the most important issue that this election can carry.
So for you at your age, and your stage in life, why is the political situation down south causing you concern?
I think this is the most serious threat that Canada has faced in the last 200 years.
To our sovereignty, you mean?
To our sovereignty, to our
economy?
way of life, to the economy. I've been watching the MAGA movement build since, the 2014, 2015, and becoming increasingly alarmed as to where this goes. And that's when we look at the candidates at the federal level. I'm mostly concerned with how are we going to address this, not even existential, a very real threat to Canada.
And how do you frame it, Jamie? What worries you as a 20-year-old younger Canadian about what's happening right now with the States?
I mean, obviously, I want to grow up in the Canada. I want my children, to grow up in the Canada that I grew up with. I don't want to be, at war with U.S. and that sort of thing. I agree with what he said. This is a massive threat, and lucky me, it's my first federal election. It's huge, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we know you're not voting Conservative based on what you said. So do you know which way you're leaning or how you're going to vote?
I'm more leaning towards NDP, but I'm just concerned if they have a chance in way of them or the Liberals versus Conservatives.
Okay. What views align with the NDP? What kinds of things or issues are top of mind for you that you really care about?
Just sort of the social aspect of it. I feel most strongly that the NDP specifically cares more about the people that they're going to represent.
So you're leaning into the social aspects of what you heard the party say?
Yeah, they care more about the people less than like the money or like that sort of aspect of it, I feel.
Your father is rolling his eyes.
What?
As a right winger, I kind of bristle when people tell me that my side of the aisle only worries about money and not about people, and that's the reason that I've been getting more and more involved in politics lately, because I feel that the right wing, due to some of the extreme right views that are creeping in, are starting to talk about social issues over top of economic or fiscal or other issues, which I think are far more important. I don't see the reason that social issues should have a left or right component. I think that's something that should be a free vote for free conscience on how you feel about social issues.
What are the conversations like in your house, Jamie? I mean, I know I asked you that earlier, but when you do both think sort of politically this differently.
I mean, most debates between my dad and I start over dinner. I'll mention something I saw and we'll have two differing views on it, and my mom will get sick of it. And but yeah, I have built my opinion a lot. I've been influenced a bit by what my dad says and what I see on the internet, and I know that's not the best place to get your information, but fact checking and all that is important.
Can you give us an example of one of the debates from yourself or from Rick that you guys might have disagreed on? Like, what's a point of policy that each of you might disagree on that might really get you into it?
I would say biggest is probably like abortion rights, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Like, I'm very pro-abortion, very woman's choice, very that sort of thing.
Pro-choice, yeah.
And my dad's more not.
You can describe, Rick. What are you?
Yeah.
I used to describe myself as pro-life, but recently, in the past 20 years or so, my views on that have been changing to more understand the social issues and the social pressures on women who are facing that choice. And I've been more and more influenced by the discussions that have come up about, abortion versus safe abortion, abortion versus other choices. I would not call myself pro-life anymore. Mm-hmm. I would say that I'm more interested in finding the best outcome for each individual woman facing that choice in her life.
When you vote, do you think about the individual in the riding, or do you think about we've talked about the parties overall? So for you, Jamie, is it a party that you look at, or is it the person?
It's kind of a mix of both. I mean, the person that I'm voting for and also the leader of that party is what I'll look at. Like, we got a Polyev ad in the mail, and as my boyfriend's mother pointed out, all of it is just 3 words, is blank the blank, and they're just using buzzwords, But on the back, it's a very detailed attack on the other party.
Got it.
So it feels like that's what they're concerned with, is just getting people's attention and holding it, and
it's too negative for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why isn't Mark Carney or Jagmeet Singh for you, Rick, maybe the right choice moving forward?
Well, I always take this opportunity when elections come up to remind everybody that our democratic responsibility in Canada is to send the very best person possible to represent us in Ottawa. So your first choice should be to talk to all the candidates that are possible for you to vote in. So right now, I only know 2 of the candidates in my riding, which is Marty Morance and Doug Elson.
In Winnipeg West, yeah.
Yeah, and I've talked to Doug before. I've talked to Marty before. I plan to talk to them again. I want to see how Marty sticks or doesn't stick or has more of a free voice concerning the platform that the Conservatives have put forward, and the same with Doug. I will form my final decision then.
Is it hard as a family to disagree? What's it like when you hear your dad talking about his views and values, and they're different from yours?
I mean, I'm glad that he's not extreme with his views. Then I think it would be like an actual problem.
Say what? Okay.
What's it like for you as a parent, too?
She's articulate, she's bright, she's intelligent, and she's well-read. And I've always encouraged her to have her own opinions, not just for her own sake and for her own life. It's just more fun when you're able to have somebody to debate that actually has, a brain on their shoulders and has good opinions. It makes debating more interesting. And as any debate does, it generates new ideas and new viewpoints and new ways of looking at things.
Well, let's see who gets across the finish line on April 28th. Thank you for being here. Nice to see you, Rick. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
And Jamie, nice to meet you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
So that is voters here in Winnipeg West. My conversation with Rick and Jamie Fikes in studio last week about casting their ballots here in this riding. Stay tuned. Our live show continues from here, but right now we're going to switch to news of the day and talk more about what is happening in terms of your buying habits. Are you buying Canadian? Shirts and hats with slogans like "Elbows Up" and "Canada's Not for Sale" can be found in abundance online and in stores. Companies have been displaying Made in Canada products prominently on their shelves. To talk about the trends, Sam Fiorella, author of Influence Marketing and Chief Strategy Officer at Sensei Marketing, is here for a few minutes before the news. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Sam. We've talked a lot before, but have you ever seen anything like this before in Canada in terms of this trend?
Yeah, great speaking with you again. No, nothing to this scale. I would say maybe post-NAFTA, late 80s when the I Am Canadian commercial first came out was one example maybe, or the 2010 Olympics maybe. There was a little bit of a celebratory blip there in patriotism, but never anything to this scale.
So what kinds of sales tactics and products are we seeing out there? I mentioned some of them. I mean, some are obvious. The elbows up is pretty obvious, but what else are you seeing?
Well, there's everything from the shelf talkers at the grocery stores that have the little Canadian flag to highlight, what is local and what is not, right down to people starting to add stickers to their products that show that this is, locally made or supports local communities, or there's donations being given. We're seeing it everywhere. There's even a local burger place down the road from me that has, its name is Oklahoma Burgers, but it's a Canadian company who saw all of its sales die. And so they've had to go on the offensive basically and say, we are Canadian owned and operated. We source everything here locally. So it's really having an impact with people's wallets, especially.
Tell me a bit more about how companies that maybe haven't, got on board with this might want to market the trend in a smart way, but also you got to be careful because people don't always like companies to look like they're taking advantage of a moment for profit. So what's the line, you think companies could walk?
Yeah, Canadians in particular are susceptible to that opportunistic type of marketing and the backlash that will come from that, because we are much more modest and reserved despite leaning into patriotism. You think we are quietly awesome as opposed to we're number one, which the, Molson I Am Canadian ad did so well. You can't be opportunistic, essentially. You can't jump on a bandwagon talking about being made in Canada, but then having your product sourced in China. That will get called out really, really quickly and then amplified on social media to the point where it could really ruin your brand. So you have to not be tone deaf. You have to be authentic with it and get your back house in order before you start marketing proudly Canadian.
What are some of the other pitfalls, especially when you think about social justice and such? How should marketers frame that?
Yes, and again, this is the thing that people have to understand about not being tone deaf and understanding us, that, overtly strong patriotic branding might alienate immigrants, multicultural communities, or even Indigenous groups who will feel left out of the dominant national narrative, right? So in a diverse country like Canada, it's important to buy Canadian, but it can't come across as buy white, rural, and old stock Canadian, especially if you're looking for something that's going to be a national campaign. And because we're so very online right now, if a company claims to champion Canada that, like I said earlier, is caught outsourcing jobs, especially using American suppliers, the backlash will be very, very swift.
All right, Sam, thank you very much for touching the topic. We're going to open the listener lines on it. Appreciate it.
Take care.
You as well. That's Sam Fiorella, the author of Influence Marketing and Chief Strategy Officer at Sensei Marketing. 788-3205. Have your habits changed to try to buy Canadian? We haven't asked in a while, so curious where you're at right now. Your news is next.
This This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is 2 degrees, and we're headed to a still cool high of 8, and there is still a chance we may see more showers or drizzle through the day. A Brazilian man says he was forced to leave Canada after blowing the whistle on a Winnipegger illegally hiring foreign workers. Igor Santos says he gave authorities evidence he and others had been misled into working at a local construction site without permits. Santos was applying for a valid work permit when a border agent told him to get out of the country.
As soon as he actually just kicked me out of Canada, I honestly, I wanted to cry. Again, I was just working, not because I wanted to. I knew I was illegal. I was not feeling comfortable. But again, I left everything behind. I left my college. I left my life.
Gurvinder Singh Ahluwalia pleaded guilty to unauthorized employment of foreign nationals last week. The prosecution said at least 14 foreign nationals had been illegally working on that site. Frustration on the picket line. Healthcare support workers from extended care personal care homes in Manitoba picketing in Winnipeg yesterday over their employer's third-party payroll system. Their union, CUPE, says workers have experienced compensation issues since extended care adopted the payroll system 2 years ago. Dietary staff, healthcare aides, and housekeepers were among those raising their voices outside the Tuxedo Villa personal care home on Corridon. May Quinto, a longtime healthcare aide, represents the facility's healthcare support workers.
They are frustrated. Like every paycheck, they need to go file a payroll inquiry because they're missing some hours of their pay.
In an email to CBC News, Extended Care apologizes to the workers for any discrepancies, saying base pay for regular hours for workers had not been impacted. China is taking new steps today in a trade war with the U.S., retaliating against Washington by responding with an 84% tariff on U.S. goods sold in China. It's part of Beijing's reaction to President Trump's 125% tariff on Chinese goods. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is questioning Trump's tariff strategy.
How is it worth it when you have people that have been our neighbors and allies and friends for almost 200 years in Canada now distrusting the United States, our friends in the UK, throughout Europe distrusting the United States? We are becoming isolated from the rest of the world.
Yesterday, Trump paused a plan to impose hefty tariffs on dozens of U.S. trading partners. Liberal leader Mark Carney taking his promise of making Canada an energy superpower to the heart of Canada's oil industry yesterday, campaigning in Alberta. The promise is to speed up the review process to greenlight major national energy projects. In Vancouver, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh promising to fight for expanded pharmacare coverage for more prescription drugs. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre showcasing his crime platform in Northern Ontario, including harsher penalties for repeat serious offenders. You can hear the latest on the campaign as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. A man is suing after Winnipeg police allegedly destroyed more than $50,000 worth of guns seized from his home. Andrew Krywaniska has filed a lawsuit against the city and Winnipeg police for an unspecified amount of damages. The 46-year-old was convicted of 6 firearm-related offenses in 2021 after police seized more than 70 guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition from his home. He claims police destroyed some of the guns despite a judge's order to send them to auction. None of the allegations have been proven in court. A statement of defense has not yet been filed. Manitoba's official opposition wants this to be heard every day at the Manitoba legislature.
Oh, Canada.
The rally for Canada this past Sunday at the Manitoba legislature. Well, the Progressive Conservatives plan to put forward a motion today asking the House Rules Committee to require singing of O Canada before every sitting of the legislature. Interim PC leader Wayne Iwasu calls it a permanent symbol of collective Canadian pride.
With the daily onslaught of the U.S. and Chinese tariffs, it is important that we all recognize the important things that make us Canadian and part of the Commonwealth. It's important that we educate our children and the youth on our Canadian history, our traditions, and our heritage.
The NDP hasn't said whether it will support the resolution. Ultimately, it will be up to the Rules Committee to decide. You can find more Manitoba news on our website. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells, live in our news center this morning. All right, let's get a look at this weather forecast. Abby, I'll tell you what, I'm set up obviously at Tim's this morning, 3890 Grant, and you can always tell when there's fewer people inside and people are through the drive-thru that the weather's not exactly perfect. It's almost misty and foggy out here in West Winnipeg right now.
Yeah, Marcy, I know I'm supposed to do regional first, but how about tell you about tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to see highs around 16 degrees in a lot of the regions down south.
Ooh, sorry, that was for the 16.
Yeah. Anyway, current conditions, cloudy skies, some drizzles across the southern regions. Conditions will clear as we get into the day. Winnipeg, 2 degrees at this point. Cloudy conditions we're seeing. It will clear and then we'll warm up to 8 degrees. Light winds, some foggy conditions will be returning tonight. And for tomorrow, expect sunny skies. For the Pembina Valley region, we're looking at similar conditions to Winnipeg. Similar, cloudy skies and a chance of drizzle off and on this morning. Warming up close to 10 degrees. Some foggy conditions spotted there. So if you're on the highways, you should take it easy. You will be warming up to around 9 degrees as mentioned. In the Westman region, we're seeing temperatures hover 1 and 0 at this time. Cloudy conditions also warming up to a high of 9. Dauphin is sitting at 2 degrees. Warming up to a high of 7 for today. In the Interlake region, we're seeing Gimli at 1. Cloudy conditions, some drizzle and rain in the forecast today. That should clear this afternoon. High around 7. Up north, the powerful influence surrounding areas hovering around a 1 and a 0. Some sunshine later in the day, warming up to 11. Thompson is at 2 degrees. Cloudy conditions, that should clear in the afternoon, warming up to 10. Churchill, -8, mostly cloudy, highs around 6. And then tomorrow, we're going to see highs of between 11 degrees and 16 degrees in most of the regions. But for Winnipeg right now, we are at 2 degrees, warming up to 8.
All right. Thanks a lot, Abby.
Thank you.
It's time to check our morning commute. Chloe Friesen is here with me at the Tim's in West Winnipeg. And what's up?
There's 2 cars in the drive-through. So
Otherwise,
that's the
it's all
immediate
good?
traffic. Other than that, we're looking at Archibald. It's closed in both directions from Demoulin to Laverin Dry Street. Use McTavish Street to detour. If you see anything else out there that is slowing you down, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Chloe. It was mostly wet on the commute in, not so much icy, but if you're walking, it could be a little bit pesky today as well, so wear the right footwear. I know that one of our colleagues was rejoicing in wearing her rubber boots. What is it about wearing rubber boots that just immediately make you feel like a kid? I agree. All right, let's get to business news. Christly Ramlakan's with us live on CBC with our report this morning. Hello to you.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So once again, we're watching stock markets skyrocketing after President Donald Trump now announcing this 90-day pause on some tariffs yesterday. Break down what exactly he said and what the markets did.
Yeah, so in markets in Canada and the U.S. soared after the pause on reciprocal tariffs on most nations. However, a 10% baseline tariff remains in place, and Trump has actually raised duties on Chinese imports to 125%. And investment strategists say it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen going forward, as the move may not reduce uncertainty, but just delay it. So the S&P TSX closed up more than 1,200 points. The index had been down earlier in the morning amid worries about the trade war and whether it would cause a recession. And then in New York, the Dow was up more than 2,900 points, and the S&P 500 was up 9.5%, its third best day since World War II. Now, markets had fallen significantly over the previous 4 trading days. We've been talking about that after Trump announced the sweeping global tariffs last week. And in recent days, the trade war between China and the U.S. has really ramped up. And some experts say prolonged trade uncertainty will likely feed into hard economic data and corporate earnings. And some companies, including Delta Airlines, have declined to provide forward guidance amid the uncertain times.
Let's go to a few tech companies, though, because they're out billions of dollars because of the markets. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Silicon Valley leaders, they donated to Trump's campaign or inaugural fund. They visited him at Mar-a-Lago and sat front and center as he was sworn into office. But in the first 3 months of his presidency, their wallets have been hit by his policies. So companies including Meta, Apple, Google, Tesla, and Amazon have lost nearly $1.8 trillion in value since the start of the year, even after markets rebounded yesterday. So as a result, the personal wealth of those leaders of those companies has also shrunk. Now, tech leaders almost certainly hope to gain some business benefits by hitching their wagons to Trump's, such as fewer regulations or reduced antitrust pressure. But the losses indicate Silicon Valley is also facing challenges in the wake of Trump's tariff plans, which, heavily target supply chains in Asia, where tech companies source components and assemble products. So analysts have warned that long-term reciprocal tariffs could shrink tech earnings by as much as 25%. And that would be a big shift from the relatively steady gains that big tech has enjoyed in recent years.
And before we look at markets this morning, there's been some interest now for a possible new owner for Hudson's Bay.
Yes, so a Chinese billionaire in British Columbia has taken to social media to announce her plans to buy dozens of Hudson's Bay locations after she says she saw Canadians feeling sad over the collapse of the retail giant. Entrepreneur Wei Hung Liu is the board chairwoman of Central Walk, which is a retail investment company that owns 3 shopping centers in BC. Liu has shared a series of videos on Chinese social media platform Red Note, saying that she wants to restore the Bay to its glory. So, of course, we know that the Bay plans to liquidate all but 6 of its 80 stores. And bids for the company's assets or investments in the business are due April 30th. But some retail analysts say Liu could just be in search for some social media attention. One of her properties, Woodgrove Shopping Center in Nanaimo, has been listed for sale. And if the deal does go through, it could be an uphill battle. It could be difficult to revive the store since investors would need to find vendors willing to sell products to them. And then it would take, of course, some money to renovate these stores and to also have stock in them.
What's going on in the markets this morning? What do the rest of the numbers tell us?
In Europe, markets have risen sharply. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, stocks are jumping. Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is up. Oil is down $1.40 to $60.95 US per barrel. Gold is up $40.60 to $3,122.60 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.05 of a cent to 71.1 cents US.
All right, thanks a lot, Crystal. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
With our business news on CBC, that's Crystal Roundlacan. 6:44 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcus on location with Chloe Friesen and Donna Carrero, and we're in the riding of Winnipeg West. So every week leading up to the election, we're in a different part of Winnipeg. We've chosen our ridings carefully, and we're trying to go where people might be locally really leaning in a way because of past results. And this riding is one of those because it was so close last time. The winner won here by 460 votes. That is Marty Morance. He's a Conservative incumbent. He will be here in the next hour to speak with us. Also, Liberal Doug Elson is his opponent this time around. He previously held this riding in 2019, and he will be joining us on the program as well in the next hour and a half here. So he's on after 8. If you want to join us or ask a question, you can do so. But in addition to the voters that we're going to hear from today, and I'll read some comments in a moment already from folks that have been coming in and out at the Tims and taking some time to talk politics. I did spend a few hours in this riding earlier in the week talking to folks outside different grocery stores. They're packing their carts. One of them was Marilyn Wardell. I asked her whom she thinks is the right person to lead the country right now.
I think whatever leader we can get in who'll be very strong against the tariffs and everything.
Mm-hmm. So is that top of your list for concerns this time around when you think about your vote?
I think so. I really do, and I think I've made up my mind as to how I'm going to vote.
Mm-hmm. How are you going to vote?
Oh. I think I'm leaning towards Liberal. Okay. Yeah. I think Mark Carney's experience, I think that speaks volumes. And what I've seen so far when he's interviewed and any of his speeches, I think I'm leaning towards him. I think he's what we need right now.
Riding Winnipeg West agrees with that when you look at the federal party leaders. Here's another voter I spoke with.
Full name is Jet, spelled 2 T's, Eastlofson.
Yeah, nice to meet you. How long have you lived in this part of Winnipeg?
All my life.
Oh, okay. So, and how old are you now? Can I ask? Rude question.
I am 67.
Okay, all right. So that's lots of years. Do you always vote the same way, or does your vote move around?
No, I vote the same way.
Okay.
Yep.
So how do you vote, and how will you be voting on the 28th then?
I will be supporting the Conservative Party, and this riding's Marty Morance, and I will be supporting him.
Tell me why that aligns with what you care about.
I think it aligns for me some independence from the United States, maybe a move towards dealing with, say, Europe, Japan, maybe possibly, in my opinion, maybe some little African countries that might want to do business with us. I do agree with our Liberal Prime Minister, though, like the days of dealing with the United States are over. And I think the Conservative Party upholds that opinion as well, and we should be dealing more with, walk away from the United States. We'll deal with them when they want to talk like adults.
When you go to the polls, you right away knew that Marty Morance was running here, was your incumbent for the Conservatives. Do you vote based on the candidate, or do you look at the party policies or the leaders? What kinds of things do you think about when you cast your vote?
Really both. I look who the candidate is, and I've worked on committee, like the local EDA with Marty Morance, and I know him, and I've met him, and I appreciate the work he's done in this riding.
Right away you went to sort of real big picture issues, not things happening in this corner of Winnipeg. Is that for you sort of the story of this election and the top of mind when you're this year?
The big picture, yeah, the international, yes.
What do you like about Pierre Poilievre as leader then, given that you're voting Conservative, and what kinds of things he's put forward that you think are solid for you?
He shares with standing up for Canada, as we are not a 51st state, we're not gonna be, and Pierre Poilievre has upheld that in all the things I've seen in the media, and I agree with all that.
Couple hours in the riding talking to people. Jeff Eastlofson talking about how he's going to be supporting the Conservatives on April 28th. Well, questions are coming in live this morning for the candidates. Marty Morance will be here at 7:40, the Conservative incumbent. And we had a voter come in and say, please put this to him. Recently, Pierre Poilievre, he says, seems to be friendlier towards President Trump and MAGA movements. Does Marty's view, Marty Morance, align with Poilievre's? And how would you deal with the threat from the United States? So 2 questions for Marty Morance directly, and we'll make sure that we get those questions from the voter here in Winnipeg West into our interview. Jason Carter also having a question for the incumbent. Jason writing, Morance, he's also a Winnipegger and a voter that wrote into Facebook in this case. He says, Marty Morance and his party successfully convinced the Liberals to axe the carbon tax. So obviously the thought for the carbon tax being gone originated with the Conservatives, but now the Liberals, of course, did it, and they're getting the credit for it. So Jason framing this, looking at the history of it. But he's saying bravo, but if it's replaced with a national program that decreases fossil fuel consumption, what is that? So he's asking, what is it going to look like now that the carbon tax is going to be gone? What about the environment? And if you want to read some of the local pieces we've been doing, Bartley Kivas, my colleague in the newsroom here, of course, has done a recent article this week about the fact that the environment really is something that a lot of people are saying is missing from this campaign in terms of being discussed. So we'll get some of the questions to the candidates in the next hour. We're live in Winnipeg West. We're at 3890 Grant. We're at the Tim Hortons here if you want to come join us on this misty morning. It is 2 degrees in Winnipeg right now and a high of 8. We are expecting this drizzle or rain to continue throughout the day. Well, next on Information Radio, let's turn our attention to those tariffs. As Canadian farmers gear up for some spring planting, they're facing so many challenges. The agriculture sector is grappling with tariffs imposed by China and also reciprocal tariffs that Canada put on China. There's ongoing trade uncertainty with the states, and the federal election just adds another layer to the uncertainty about the path ahead. To talk about the ag point of view, Stuart Smythe is with us, professor in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics at the University of Saskatchewan. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So I know you're about to talk about the tariffs from China. I can't help but quote a grain farmer here in Manitoba around this. He was on CBC, Jason Johnston. He operates his grain farm in Darlingford. That's southwest of Winnipeg. For people that missed this, I mean, he was talking to us, last month, but he was talking about what is happening with the counter tariffs and what's going on with canola tariffs. He says in the week since the announcement's been made, this is his quote, canola dropped $2 a bushel. On his farm, it meant $80,000 loss each and every year. So he was outlining some serious concerns. What else are you hearing about the tariffs from China and how they're impacting Canadian farmers?
Yeah, so I'll give you the perspective on a per ton basis. So when he said about $2 a bushel, it was a drop of about $120 a ton. Fortunately, that's recovered. It's down only about $20 a ton now. So that's a little bit of good news, is that prices have recovered since this announcement was made. But the longer term concern is that the price of fall and winter contracts is very low. So one of the ways farmers reduce their risk is to sign a contract to sell a portion of their crop next fall or next winter. And the price of those contracts right now is below the cost of production for many canola and pea producers across the prairies.
With the election, close now, what kind of policies or actions might farmers hope for or be looking for from the federal parties that are running?
I think one of the things I've seen in talking to them and following their comments online is that we've all seen how much time and effort has been invested by politicians at all levels and policymakers to have conversations and discussions with American counterparts, which have been successful. But the farmers are frustrated because they're not seeing any evidence or certainly communication intended with Chinese counterparts. And so they would be hoping that because the dialogues have been successful with the U.S., that the Canadian officials would begin to have similar conversations with China, but that doesn't seem to be occurring.
How is it impacting planting? I started by saying, they're making farmers have to make decisions about what they're going to put in the ground facing all this uncertainty. What's that like, and what are you hearing?
Most farmers are locked into this, Marcy, because planning is it takes a number of months. So they've been, making seed purchases and getting fertilizers delivered and chemicals delivered. So all of these things are on farm as farmers will begin to seed within the next few weeks. So to be able to make, they might be able to pivot a few hundred acres, but to make a significant adjustment, they've already invested the cost in that. So I think they'll be proceeding with more or less in line with what they've been planning over the winter.
They're locked in, yeah. And as soon as that came out of my mouth, I'm like, they're already locked in, obviously, because they have to plan so far ahead. I wonder, moving forward, though, do you think this global tariff trade war is going to lead to changes in how farmers operate in this country, or maybe the way Canada exports?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that, Marcy. Just yesterday, Viterra announced that they were putting a pause on a huge, hundreds of millions of dollars expansion into a canola processing facility in Saskatchewan. And so, as these tariffs and uncertainty exist, it means that, producers, exporters are going to be facing lower prices. That's reducing investment into value-added processing in Canada, and then that translates into fewer jobs in the Canadian economy.
What is, given all of this uncertainty and such, then what do you think moving forward is going to be like? Do you think there'll be more of a coordinated effort across the country for producers to get together and figure out how they want to move forward? Because sometimes it gets provincially siloed because every province produces such different things.
I think that's yes, that's going to happen in agriculture, but I think all sectors, Marcy, because we're seeing a rise in protectionism. So it's happening in Europe, the States, evidently China. India's been in this game as well. So, we're seeing sort of an undermining of the global free trade system that's developed over the last 70 or 75 years. And are we going to return back to a sort of a global trade pattern typical of pre-World War II? Or are we going to be able to find ways of resolving these challenges right now and comply to the trade rules? Because all of these tariffs, including Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, they all violate the World Trade Agreement. So, our country is going to return to playing by the rules, or are we going to see a rise in protectionism and cost?
Thank you very much, Stuart, for the analysis. Obviously, every day is exactly different from the last based on how quickly things have been changing here, but we appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. That's Stuart Smythe. He's professor in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics over at the University of Saskatchewan. We are going to be hearing national and international news momentarily, and so we're going to hear more about what this meant yesterday, this Trump pausing tariffs and yet still keeping the 10% in place. Canada, though, and Mexico not mentioned in what he was saying yesterday, so some more analysis coming up. Right now, on a misty start to our day, as I've been mentioning, and cloudy out there, let's check with Heather Wells on headlines, and then I'll give you the rest of the forecast here. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Yes. Well, frustration on the picket line. Healthcare support workers from extended care, personal care homes picketing yesterday over their employer's third-party payroll system. Their union, CUPE, says workers have experienced compensation issues ever since extended care adopted the payroll system 2 years ago. A man is suing after Winnipeg police allegedly destroyed more than $50,000 worth of guns seized from his home. Andrew Krywaniska has filed a lawsuit against the city and Winnipeg police for an unspecified amount of damages. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And so here's the rest of that forecast. A chance this drizzle or rain is going to continue through the morning in Winnipeg, and our high is 8 degrees. Some clearing tonight, a low down to -1. And then tomorrow, sunny in the morning, and then we could see a windy day, but the high is going to be right around 15 for tomorrow in Winnipeg. So you can't have that on the forecast sheet and not look ahead and mention it, right? But let's get through this drizzly, cooler day first. Traffic moving fine so far, 788-3093 if you have anything new to update, and we'll pass it along. Coming up next, in the next hour of the show, we're going to hear from a conservative voter here in Winnipeg West who says she's done with 10 years with the Liberals, but she also says she really believes people have to inform themselves and get out and vote, and just don't complain about the process if you're not going to cast a ballot. So we'll hear more from her. Also, we're going to hear from an undecided voter who's a caregiver for his elderly mother, and he says for him it's about cost, it's about inflation, but he's not sure yet who he's going to be voting for. So we're going to hear from those folks out of here in Winnipeg West. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're on location, 3890 Grant. We're at the Tim Hortons this morning, and come down and see us because in the next hour we continue from this riding, looking at the issues here and hearing from the candidates. So right now it's 1 minute to 7 o'clock, and it's 7:40 on the show live here from the Tims. Conservative incumbent Marty Morance will be here. He's the MP in this riding. He has held it since 2019 when he won it from the Liberals. But last time the vote spread was only 460 votes, and it prompted a recount. So stay tuned. We'll talk to him.
Today on The Current.
And sometimes the economy has to come first over some of our other long-term goals.
The next installment in our election road trip rolls into the 905 region. These are the suburbs surrounding Toronto. There are 30-plus ridings, and elections are often decided in this area. You'll hear conversations about the auto sector and more coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 907 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. China is not backing down from Donald Trump's latest salvo in the trade war. The U.S. president hit Beijing with a 125% tariff. It was in reaction to China imposing an 84% duty on U.S. imports. This morning, Beijing says China will continue to the end. My World Report co-host John Northcott joins me now with the latest. And John, what are we seeing in Asia this morning?
Marcia, Asian markets from Singapore to Taiwan and Japan all saw substantial jumps in value today as investors scrambled with relief to take advantage of the Trump tariff reprieve. Markets rose somewhat in Hong Kong and Shanghai as well, but not nearly to the same extent, as investors and officials appear to be hunkering down for the long haul. An article in the state-controlled China Daily argues that the tariff hikes, quote, severely infringe on China's legitimate rights and interests and destabilize the global economic order. For the record, Chinese officials are vowing to fight to the end. For China's rulers and its people, the Trump trade war goes to national pride and has existential implications. Danny Russell is with the Asia Society Policy Institute.
What he has achieved is getting the Chinese people to rally behind President Xi Jinping and reduced the incentive for China to compromise.
Russell adds the Trump flip-flops have sent a message to the Chinese that whatever deal could be struck might not stick.
Do we have any sense at this point what Donald Trump might be thinking?
Marcia, while some might be reluctant to call it a strategy on Trump's part, he says countries are coming to him to make a deal, and so, he says, will China.
China wants to make a deal, and President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well, and they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal.
Trump says he's willing to talk to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Meanwhile, Chinese officials have filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization over the tariffs.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Marcia.
My World Report co-host, John Northcott. The EU says it will put its tariff retaliation on hold for 90 days to match Donald Trump's pause. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says she wants to give time for negotiations to work. European markets are responding with some relief this morning. London's FTSE opened up 6% and Germany's DAX climbed 8% in early trading. Liberal leader Mark Carney says the pause on some U.S. tariffs is good for the global economy, but Canada will still need to renegotiate trade with the U.S. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Carney is not the right man for that job.
Carney is running his entire campaign on a false promise that he can control the president through magical, masterful negotiating techniques. Well, we know now that that is not true. Nobody can control this president.
Poilievre was campaigning in Brampton, Ontario overnight, and today he is staying in the 905. There are about 30 ridings up for grabs in that suburban region around Toronto. The Liberals and the NDP are fighting to win a seat, any seat in Saskatchewan. The leaders of both parties touched down in Saskatoon last night, their planes parked next to each other on the tarmac. As Ashley Burke reports, they threw events in a riding they're both hoping to win.
We are in the Paris of the prairies, thank God. This is amazing.
Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
Oh man, this is in some energy. We needed this energy.
Both rallying supporters in Saskatoon West within 2 kilometers of one another.
We got to send great Saskatchewan MPs to Ottawa, because let me tell you, I have lived in Ottawa a number of years and nothing happens in Ottawa.
The Liberals and NDP were both shut out of the province in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Now the parties are trying to change that and pick up Conservative seats.
Ottawa works best when one party doesn't have all the power. We've seen in our history the best things that have ever come out of our parliament have been when New Democrats have been there. Our universal health care, New Democrats.
Singh pitching the hope of a minority government by sending more NDP MPs to parliament. He's hoping to build on momentum that the NDP saw provincially in the fall election, as the Liberals try to solidify their strong support in polls across the Prairie provinces. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Saskatoon.
A U.S.-Russian dual citizen jailed in Russia has been freed. It was part of a prisoner exchange with the U.S. Ballerina Ksenia Karolina was convicted of treason in a Russian court. The charges came after she made a $52 donation to a U.S. charity assisting Ukraine. Karolina lives in Los Angeles. She was arrested last year while visiting family in Russia. Karolina's lawyer confirmed she left on a plane to the U.S. from Abu Dhabi, where the swap took place. In the Dominican Republic, hope more survivors will be found in the rubble of a collapsed nightclub is starting to fade.
y es lo siguiente. He visto en algunos medios de comunicación.
The head of emergency operations updated people keeping vigil for their loved ones last night. 218 people are now confirmed dead. 24 patients are still in hospital, and there are dozens of people still waiting to hear something about their missing loved ones. We will get a better picture this morning of how Canadians are reacting to the Trump administration. Statistics Canada is due to release its report on cross-border travel. It is expected to show Canadians are avoiding trips to the U.S. in droves, and it's having an economic impact on popular destinations like Florida. Steve Futterman reports.
70-year-old Laurie Fisher lives in Winnipeg, but has been coming to Florida every winter since he was 5.
What's going on now between Canada and the United States, from a Canadian point of view, is untenable.
Now he is going home. He sold his condo here in Clearwater and doesn't expect to come back.
I've talked to a lot of Canadians that have made the decision to leave.
And many who were thinking of coming are staying away.
Pretty large amount of Canadians are actually deciding to cancel their trips.
Robert Washington is a real estate broker in Tampa.
So I work with a lot of investors that own Airbnbs. One client said about 40% of his bookings were with Canadians. All of them canceled his trips.
All over Florida, businesses, especially hospitality businesses, are feeling the impact. In one spot, especially popular with Canadians.
Beautiful Dunedin, Florida, the site of the first spring training game of the Blue Jays.
In Dunedin, Canadians did show up for the Blue Jays preseason games, but the numbers seem to be smaller. And Don Daly, who runs a popular bar in Dunedin, says those that did show up went home very quickly when the games ended.
Yeah, I would say it was a significant drop-off over the past week. Usually people will stay around until after Easter, and it usually kind of tapers off slowly, but we felt a little bit of a significant drop just this past week.
The big question among those impacted is whether this is a one-year anomaly or possibly the new normal. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Clearwater, Florida.
The artist in residence at the University of Prince Edward Island has quit. Christopher Griffin's U.S.-themed painting is proving controversial on campus. As Wayne Thibodeau reports, it is a parody of the famed Washington crossing the Delaware.
When my country was threatened by the government of the United States of America, I felt I had to do something.
Christopher Griffin's painting is a group of lemmings in a boat carrying an American flag.
I chose lemmings because they have the mythology of producing mass suicide by jumping over a cliff. And it seemed to me that the government of the United States was self-inflicting wounds.
The college says it prompted complaints, including from American faculty members. Griffin says he was given two options: take down the controversial painting or leave. He decided to quit.
I offered to do a talk and to explain why I thought this painting was relevant and important, and they declined to do that.
Dominique Griffin is the dean of the Atlantic Veterinary College, where the artwork was on display.
We do not intend to censor his work. We did express that he was welcome to continue his work, but just that an institute of higher education, especially one that focuses on veterinary science and animal health, was not the right venue for
Christopher Griffin says he just wanted to stand up for his country. He says a university is the perfect place to have this discussion.
I'm quite disturbed by what is going on. I love this country, and I want to do what I can.
Griffin says he doesn't wish any ill will on the university or its administration. He says it's just too bad it had to end this way. Wayne Thibodeau, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Still one of the most read stories at cbcnews.ca. That is the latest from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone, and a misty start to the day. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It's Thursday, and we are live at the Tim Hortons in Winnipeg West, riding at 3890 Grant. Last time around, this was a tight riding. We're going to find out how voters here are thinking about voting on the 28th.
I think I've made up my mind as to how I'm going to vote.
How are you going to vote?
Oh, I think I'm leaning towards Liberal. I think Mark Carney's experience, I think that speaks volumes, and what I've seen so far, I'm leaning towards him. I think he's what we need right now.
You know, it's a very important time to make sure you get out there. You can't complain unless you vote.
So Marty is Marty Morance. He's the Conservative incumbent here, and we're going to find out why he wants to keep that job. He's going to join us live at Tim's at 7:40 for the interview. If you want to add a question in, please go on our Facebook page. It's Marcy Marcusa Online, or come down and see us here. Love to have you. You can also call our listener line 788-3205. Also, I want to mention something this half hour because it's really kind of quirky. Manitobans are lining up right now to a local greenhouse, and it may not be for what you think. They want to get a whiff of a flower that sort of smells like death. We're going to find out more about what this is all about. Right now, Heather Wells in our news center.
Good morning. A Brazilian man says he was forced to leave Canada after blowing the whistle on a Winnipegger illegally hiring foreign workers. Igor Santos says he gave authorities evidence he and others had been misled into working at a local construction site without permits. Santos was applying for a valid work permit when a border agent told him he had to get out of the country. He says he actually wanted to cry, having to leave everything behind. A recent surge in Canadian pride could soon be echoing through the Manitoba legislature. The opposition PCs say they will put forward a resolution today asking the House Rules Committee require O Canada to be sung before every sitting of the legislature. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
All right, let's get into what's happening in the weather forecast with Abby.
Cloudy, cool for most of the province today. We're looking at 2 degrees and mostly cloudy in Winnipeg. It looks like the sky is putting up some kind of gray sweaters today. Some light rain showers, some drizzle this morning. That would take us into the afternoon. We spotted some foggy conditions. That should clear up later. And then we warm up to a high of 8 degrees. And across board, that's what we're seeing in most of the southern region. Right now, 2 degrees. Expect a cool and cloudy day and a chance of drizzle somewhere in between, warming up to a high of 8 degrees.
Yeah, it's a hard to get out of bed morning, I think, right? This is a snuggle in kind of forecast.
That's why I mentioned the gray sweater.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get into what's happening on the morning commute, whether you're walking or driving. Chloe Friesen's covering that.
Good morning. Yeah, not too much going on out there on the commute. The only thing we can see from our spot here in Tim Hortons is a very busy drive-through. But other than that, yeah, haven't heard of any major issues out there. So if you do spot anything, give us a call at 204-788-3093.
So I'll just reset where we are here in Winnipeg West for our special broadcast today. This is a federal riding that is very big. It includes St. James, Charleswood, the arm of Headingley, and now it is extended. It goes into the arm of Rosser. I mentioned it was close here last time around in 2022. Marty Morance won by just 460 votes. On election night, that looked more like 44 votes. There was actually a recount, but it was in fact 460 votes. The Liberal candidate, Doug Elson, came second, and he is running again for this seat. So he will be on live with us after 8. Marty Morance will be with us at 7:40. So what are voters thinking about here in this part of Winnipeg? Well, like a lot of people, they're struggling. Some of them told me to throw their support, who to throw their support behind in this upcoming election. I went out into the riding earlier this week and talked to people for a few hours, and I met up with Vern Dolsky. He was outside a grocery store parking lot, and here's what he had to say.
Hello there.
Hi, how are you doing?
Well, can we get your full name for CBC?
Yeah, my name's Vern Dolsky.
So you vote here in Winnipeg West. What are you thinking about leading into the election?
Well, you know, it's kind of tough. I still haven't made my mind up yet. I'm watching, of course, on CBC all the, stuff that's going on. I'll make up my mind probably closer to the 28th.
Okay. Is that normal for you? Do you wait and decide?
I do wait. I wait for the last minute, and then I make decisions on that.
And do you look at individual candidates or party promises, leaders? What do you weigh?
I do look at party promises. That's very important. And I look at all parties, not just the top two that are, right now in the lead. I do look at NDP, Green Party, and stuff like that.
How have you voted in the past, or has it changed?
I have voted Liberal for the last 2 times, I believe, since Trudeau's been in for 10 years.
Are you leaning away from the Liberals this year, or?
They got a new party person, as you know. I haven't made a decision on that yet. he looks pretty sharp to me since he was in 2008. I think he was the Governor General of the bank or something like that.
Yeah, the Governor Bank of Canada, Mark Carney was. Yeah,
Mark Carney was, right. So I'm looking, he talks very well, very good spokesperson, as far as I can see.
What kinds of issues do you care about? Like, what comes up? Like, what are you thinking about when you cast your vote in your life?
I care about inflation, senior citizens, because right now I'm looking after an 84-year-old. I'm looking at cost of living, grocery prices, of course, that's the highlight of everybody right now. They're looking at grocery prices right through Canada. It's expensive. It's expensive. I'm on CPP disability, so I look at that too. What I'd like to see is the doubling of the CPP disability. That would really help, because right now, at about $900 a month, you really can't live on that, eh? So I'd like to double that. I'd like to see a doubling of that.
And you're a caregiver to an 84-year-old, you said.
I am. Yes, I am.
What's that like? Because what needs are there that maybe anyone who's in power could help you with when you're thinking about the election?
Well, the caregiver is very important, because once a caregiver loses their health, the senior struggles then after that, right? And you want to take the burden off the healthcare system, whenever you possibly can. Because once again, that's a big issue too, healthcare. They're saying it's a provincial issue. They're getting federal funding for that, but it's still got to come from somewhere. Healthcare is really struggling.
What's in the cart? You talked about inflation, so how's it changed your shopping habits?
I watch my prices very closely. If I see something that's $2.99 and it's somewhere else $1.99, I'll probably go to the other place to get it. I basically shop at 3 different grocery stores, and I get by. I set a budget. I always go in with a budget, and I follow that.
When you're looking so far, you talked about the Liberal leader you mentioned, but you also said you're going to wait till the end to see. What other policies do you look at? Like, do you click on things when you're online looking for what will they do for cost of living? Has anyone said anything so far that appeals to you? Or are you still kind of checking it out?
I'm still kind of checking it out, I was leaning towards the Progressive Conservatives before Mark Carney stepped in, of course.
You were leaning, though, toward the Conservatives. Tell me why you were initially leaning away from the Liberals and toward the Conservatives.
Because I thought that maybe Justin Trudeau's time was limited, and I felt that maybe his time was to get out, like a lot of people thought.
So that was a leadership thing?
That was a leadership thing on the Liberals' part, yeah.
My name's Maggie Cyanchuk.
Nice to meet you. Do you vote here in this area? I work and live here?
I work at Safeway here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So have you lived in this part of Winnipeg for a long time?
In St. James area for about 12, 13 years now.
Okay. Yeah. So are you going to be voting in the upcoming election?
Absolutely, I am. Yeah, very important year.
Do you vote? Okay, why a very important year?
Oh, just because of all the unrest going on right now, and just also what Canada has been going through in the last 10 years. So, it's a very important time to make sure you get out there. You can't complain unless you vote. Yep.
Have you voted in the past? Do you vote in every federal election?
Yes, I do. Well, for the past 10 years.
Does your vote move around? Do you support the same party?
My vote moves around. Okay. I would have to say yes.
So, do you know how you're voting this year?
I do.
Okay, will you share?
Yeah, I'll be going PC. Yep. Absolutely.
Tell me why.
Well, just in the last 10 years with Liberals in power, there's been a lot of confusion, a lot of hike in prices, and a lot of unnecessary tax. And I just feel like we've lost middle class, and it's important to have more structure. Yes.
So you've been unhappy with the Liberal Party. The change in leaders didn't affect how you're thinking about that party. You don't feel like they're right for you.
No, I mean, if anything, it's not really fair that Carney can just kind of just step in, and it's not like he's fixing anything. And coming in off the cusp of what Trump is up to right now, I feel like he shouldn't get the head step because of it. Yeah.
So you're going to support the PCs. The issues you raised, you said taxes, I think, and inflation. How does that affect your life here as a Winnipegger?
Well, just with the cost of food, cost of living, and just so much unsurety, especially when it comes to just making everyday living. It's not really fair, and it's becoming very unaffordable.
Are you noticing that on grocery bills specifically, or everything? Like what's gone up in your life?
For sure. Like grocery bills, we're currently renovating our home, just like our kitchen, main floor, and the prices are insane for everything, including labor.
And the platform for the Conservatives for taxes and such, have you seen some relief in there that appeals to you?
Yes. Yes, I have, especially for the middle class people. I also agree with the Conservatives that the way they're going to handle the drug problem that we're having in Canada. And so to better manage that, as opposed to just allowing it safely and taking care of it so they stay safely, let's actually gear it towards a path of recovery.
So don't let me put words in your mouth, but it sounds like then you're talking about supervised consumption sites being something that you wouldn't be in support of around that issue.
No, I would not be in support of that. In support of it in a way to the point where they do go into it, supervised consumption, but then getting the proper help that they need to get through it, as opposed to just like, well, let's just make sure you don't overdose here and have a place to rest. They need more help, more support.
Heard also from Vern Dolsky, both Winnipeg West voters. Maggie voting for the Conservatives. Vern still undecided. Still ahead. We'll continue to focus on this riding and this part of Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're on location today. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube as people slide into the Tims here at 3890 to get their morning coffee. It is 2 degrees only in Winnipeg right now. It's cloudy and it is misty. Wow, you might be dreaming of flowers right now, but our next story is maybe not about a flower that you dream about. Manitobans, though, have been flocking to see it at a local greenhouse, going to smell something, well, frankly, rather unpleasant. There's a corpse lily that has bloomed. Now, from the time this plant is planted, it can take 5 years to bloom. This one, though, bloomed early, and it's causing quite a stink. CBC's Felicia Adams spoke to Sage Garden greenhouse owner Dave Hansen about the smelly plant.
Well, yeah. It's pretty pungent. Here we have a corpse lily, or sometimes called a voodoo lily. Its botanical name is Amorphophallus. There's a lot of different species of this, and so the most famous one is called the Titan corpse lily, which you find in those big botanical gardens. This one's a different species, so it's smaller, which makes it a little bit more manageable in a container like this, but the aroma has been really potent nonetheless.
And how long does it take you to grow one of these?
Honestly, we were a little surprised that it bloomed this year. We've been looking at this one for a couple of years. We found it from a collector in Manitoba, and when we got it, it was fully dormant, although I had visited with it over the previous year and had seen it fully leafed out. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant. But when we got it, it was fully dormant, so there was no leaves, nothing going on. We just let it rest through the winter. And over the last month or so, it has grown from nothing up to about the 3-foot size it is right now. And over this past weekend, it full on opened, and I will say yesterday, it smelled like death in here.
Oh my God. Oh, this smells like rotting chicken.
So at the beginning of the day yesterday, one of our staff members commented that it smelled a little bit like there was a dead mouse. And then as the morning unfolded, it became very apparent that this was the plant that was creating that aroma. And by the afternoon, like everywhere in this kind of main section of the retail greenhouse, literally smelled like that. I think that a few of us had really gotten up close with it, and even one person sort of touched it and felt like the aroma was stuck on their hands after, and they really wanted to get rid of that. So it was really very present. Like, you could not miss this yesterday, and it sort of had a visceral impact. This morning, I didn't notice the aroma at all at the beginning of the day, and then now, as I stand close to it, I can definitely smell it again. If you put your nose right in there, you're 100% going to be able to tell.
How long is the bloom going to continue? How many days?
So I think the bloom itself is going to be open and looking really intriguing for maybe like the next 5 to 10 days for sure. But the aroma definitely is going to go away. I think biologically, it's one of the things about this plant is that it is attracting carrion beetles to go in there and do the pollination. And so if it kind of misses that window for it to be able to be pollinated, then it just sort of moves on and it's going to start to settle down and go into its leafy stage. So next week or so, I think will be really interesting. And after that, we'll see what happens. So this is the only one we have right now. This one is having babies, so we look forward to being able to multiply it and grow them up as well. But we didn't want to disturb it while it seemed to be coming into flower.
When it does have, new sprouts coming in, are you planning on selling it or growing your own? Or?
Yeah, so we're definitely looking forward to multiplying this, and hopefully we could offer them for sale at some point in the future. Honestly, they're not necessarily a hard plant to grow as long as you're aware that they will go fully dormant for part of the year, which makes it even easier. You just let them relax. But otherwise, it's a very straightforward tropical plant. It likes to be in sort of medium to bright light, and it does take a number of years for them to get big like this to be able to bloom. But I think that most home gardeners who would be intrigued by this would be able to succeed with them.
And you mentioned tropical plant. Where geographically are these plants from?
So my understanding is these plants are from very much tropical Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, those parts of the world.
And why did you say, Okay, I think that's the plant we need to add to our greenhouse.
Yeah, so I have been looking for this for a number of years. I definitely love to collect unusual plants. I love the look of this plant beyond the intrigue of its aroma. It's just a really cool looking plant. Inside that flower, wow, it's so complicated and so beautiful. I love plants that start conversations, and this is definitely a plant that'll do that. And, there's a very strong Gothic theme in gardening right now. And so I've been trying to collect some of the more interesting, very deep, dark plants out there. So this one really checked a lot of boxes for me.
And so when you first got it, did you think that it was going to bloom as early as now, or were you sort of just anticipating it?
So my expectation for blooms was that it might take a few years in our care before we'd see blooms. So I was really surprised to see that it seemed to be creating this flower stalk, and then to actually see it bloom this past couple days, I'm really excited.
Stage Garden Greenhouse owner Dave Hansen. Scott Regeris here with Morning Sports. Hey, how you doing? Hi, Scott.
I'm thinking about rotting chicken now.
Right?
I've got that. Yeah.
The reporter
Tricky
Felice
over
came
at
back
breakfast time.
Right, Felice came back to the newsroom and said it kind of smelled like hot garbage or something. It looks quite interesting too. It's like a dark. We just described for radio listeners here because there was video rolling on YouTube, but it's like a dark purpley red and a long stalk. Almost looks like a large version of a canna lily that opens up like a cup. And then in the middle, there's this large stalk that comes up. Looks like a skinny banana coming up out the middle. It's also really dark, and it would imagine that it's sort of big. Like it probably looks like it's standing about 4 feet if you take the whole stem and then the top part. So, but the video's
its
funny.
Name should be it should be named Seymour, and then put it in one of those movies.
And suddenly Seymour smells
right.
like rotting
Thank you.
chicken. All right, let's start with the NHL here. Move to it. The Jets have a huge divisional matchup coming tonight, hey?
Nothing rotten about their play this year. No, they're going to play against the Dallas Stars tonight, the only team in their division, the Central, who can possibly catch them for the title, and that would seem unlikely. Dallas 4 points behind the Jets as things stand. Now, it's been a pretty, despite the awesome season Winnipeg's had, pretty lackluster April. It's gone back and forth, a win here, a loss there. Last time out, Winnipeg beat St. Louis, a very good Blues team of late. We don't want to see this back and forth trend continue. Here is the captain, Adam Lowry.
When we play as well as we can beat anyone on any night, and against these elite teams that we've been able to beat, we've done a real good job frustrating them, not really giving up a whole lot, and being patient in the game. That's the difference. You got to be comfortable in these tight games, comfortable where there might not be a lot generated either side, and then just wait for your opportunity.
So a regulation win tonight by the Jets over Dallas would put them right on the cusp, just a point away from winning their first ever as a franchise divisional title in the NHL. Puck drop tonight at 7 o'clock.
Let's stay on the ice. Canada plays its first game at the Women's World Championship today as well.
You betcha. They begin defense of their title this afternoon against Finland. St. Anne native Ottawa Charged defender Jocelyn Larocque, Marcy, was asked whether there's a difference in energy when compared to competing in the PWHL.
I really find when we get together, it's a whole new level, and the lines are clicking, the D pairs are clicking, like we look good. But I think the biggest thing is the connections that we have together and just the way that we play together. We elevate ourselves and each other. So when we come together, we all bring it up like 10 notches. So it's pretty fun to be a part of.
Larocque, who has been a fixture on the national team blue line for a while now, Marcy, might be fighting for minutes at this tournament. Hockey Canada wants to take a look at newcomers like the 18-year-old budding star Chloe Primerano. As much as they want to see the Maple Leaf on a higher step of the podium than the Stars and Stripes at these Worlds, they'd be even happier to see that at next year's Olympics. And this tournament, in many ways, is an addition for those games, including Brandon goalie Kristen Campbell getting the start today against the Finns, the first time she's done it at the world level. Noon Central Time puck drop for that game.
And finally, speaking of tournaments, in golf today. The smell of the flower coming in from the ground, a whiff of rotten chicken. Sorry. It's the theme from the Masters.
Yes.
It's not about the corpse flower at all.
No. It's about azaleas and magnolia trees and the odd pimento sandwich. There is a tournament going on where there are players, too. World number one, Scotty Scheffler, looking to become the Masters' first back-to-back champion in more than 2 decades. Rory McIlroy, just trying to win the one big one he's never won before. We'll talk all about it tomorrow.
All right, thanks a lot, Scott. I always look forward to when we play the theme. Once a year,
that's
Scott
right.
and I sit back and talk in our master's voices.
In our pretentious master's voices.
100%. Take care. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Stay tuned. We have Marty Morance, the incumbent Conservative here, who is trying to win this seat back on the 28th in Winnipeg West. He'll be live with us at Tim's at 3890 Grant after your news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is still 2 degrees, mostly cloudy. Still a chance we may see a little bit of drizzle or a shower or two today. A high of 8. A Brazilian man who was working without a permit says he came to Winnipeg based on lies. Igor Santos says Gurwinder Singh Ahluwalia promised he and others would get work permits if they came to Canada to work at a construction site. Border Services told Santos to leave the country after he blew the whistle about what was really happening. Santos was disappointed.
Sad because I tried to go for the right thing, and look for the right people, to try to avoid this to happen to me, because none of this was my intention. At the end of the day, the wrong people, they're still there.
Ahluwalia pleaded guilty last week to unauthorized employment of foreign nationals. He was sentenced to 20 months of house arrest and ordered to pay $50,000 as part of a plea deal. Court heard at least 14 foreign nationals were illegally working at that Winnipeg construction site. Payroll problems driving workers to the picket line. Frustrated healthcare support workers at an Extendicare personal care home across the province on a day of action here in Winnipeg, angry over what they say are ongoing compensation issues with their employer's third-party payroll system. Mary Quinto is a longtime healthcare aide and represents workers at Extendicare's Tuxedo Villa personal care home. She says she hears from members about errors on every paycheck. Quinto says it's been going on ever since the new payroll system was adopted 2 years ago.
These people are working hard. They gave their hearts and hard hours to this job. So they should not be fighting for what they are owed.
In an email to CBC, Extendicare acknowledges the frustration surrounding any discrepancies, saying base pay for regular hour workers had not been impacted. A man is suing after Winnipeg police allegedly destroyed more than $50,000 worth of guns seized from his home. Andrew Krywaniska has filed a lawsuit against the city and Winnipeg police for an unspecified amount of damages. The 46-year-old was convicted of 6 firearm-related offenses in 2021 after police in 2019 seized more than 70 guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition from his home.
The details are under a publication ban, so we can't tell you about it.
Despite a judge's
Silky
order to
is a
send them to
self-described
auction.
entrepreneur
None of
and
the
justice
allegations have been
advocate. He
proven
ran
in
for
court.
mayor back.
A statement of defense has not yet been filed. A Winnipeg police spokesperson tells CBC they were unaware of the lawsuit and declined comment. China isn't backing down from Donald Trump's latest salvo in the trade war. The U.S. president hit Beijing with a 125% tariff. It was in reaction to China imposing an 85% duty on U.S. imports. This morning, Beijing says China will continue to the end. Now, with most of the U.S. global tariff action on hold, the EU says it will put its tariff retaliation on hold as well for 90 days to match Donald Trump's pause. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says she wants to give time for negotiations to work. And European markets are responding with some relief this morning. Here in this country, the main political party leaders will fan out across Canada today on day 19 of the federal election campaign. The Greater Toronto area will host visits by the two frontrunners. Liberal leader Mark Carney will be in Brampton and Hamilton. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be in Milton and then rally northeast of Kitchener. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will be in Saskatoon, and Bloc leader Yves-François Blanchet will kick off south of Montreal, talking about border measures. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. A recent surge in Canadian pride could soon echo through the Manitoba legislature.
True patriot love in all of
That was outside the Manitoba legislature at Sunday's Rally for Canada. The opposition PCs want to hear more of that inside. They plan to put forward a resolution today asking the House Rules Committee to require O Canada be sung before every sitting day of the legislature. Government House Leader Nahanni Fontaine wouldn't say if the NDP will support this resolution, but does say everyone seems ready to stand up for Canada.
We sing O Canada when we're at games. We sing O Canada all the time. So I don't think that's something that everybody is doing right now. Everybody is singing O Canada. We're all very proud.
The anthem is traditionally sung at the start and end of each legislative session. Whether to increase it to daily will ultimately be the decision of the Rules Committee. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Heather. Let's get to our forecast now. Abby is here to tell us, well, actually not here at the Tims, but back in the studio to tell us what's going on with the rest of the day. It sure started gray and dreary, Abby.
And it's going to stay that way. Cloudy conditions and a chance of drizzle or light rain in most of the regions down south, except the north that would see a bit of sunny breaks here and there. The day will warm up slightly, but it will remain cool. And those fog patches are still being spotted here and there. They should clear. So if you're outside on the perimeter axis, you should be noticing that. For Winnipeg at this point, 2 degrees, cloudy. Expect these cloudy conditions to stay with us. We have that good chance of drizzle or some light rains through the morning into your lunch hour. That foggy condition I mentioned would linger but should clear as we get into the day. Highs would get to 8 degrees today. For the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing similar conditions to Winnipeg. Cloudy skies, a chance of drizzle, and that should clear by the afternoon period. You warm up to 10 degrees. In western Manitoba, 1 in Brandon at this time. Mostly cloudy conditions we're seeing. Expect a slim chance of a drizzle this morning. That will clear also as you get into the afternoon. You warm up to around 9-10 degrees. In the Parkland region, Dauphin is at 2. The day will start cloudy. We have this small chance of light showers in that part of the province this morning, and then conditions will improve by the afternoon period. Your high is at 7. In the Interlake region, we're seeing Gimli and surrounding areas hover around 1 and 2 degrees. Cloudy conditions you do have this cloudy skies sticking around all morning, a chance of drizzle. That should clear by the afternoon period, warming up to 7-8 in some areas there. Up north, the powerful influence surrounding areas, we're seeing temperatures around 0 and 1. Cloudy skies, that should clear as you get to the afternoon period. You warm up to 11. Thompson is at 2 degrees with mostly cloudy conditions. Expect clearing this afternoon. Highs will reach around 10. And in Churchill, we're seeing temperatures below freezing at -8 at this point. Cloudy conditions you have. That should clear up as you get to the afternoon, and then you warm up to 6 degrees. But across the province, Marcy, conditions will vary from cloudy to cool in the south to clearing skies in the afternoon. And most of the regions down south will be experiencing this drizzle or light rain and some foggy conditions with a cool, breezy day ahead. Up north remains chilly with some fog patches here and there. But tomorrow, it's going to be bringing the mix of sun and clouds, and we warm up to a high of 16.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
22 minutes to 8 o'clock now. Chloe Friesen's on site with me here, and she is here to talk to us about what's happening on the commute.
Hello. Yeah, no major issues out there that we are aware of at the moment. I was looking at some traffic maps. Things look like they're moving fairly smoothly, so that is some good news on a rainy Thursday morning. If you do spot something that is getting in your way or slowing you down, we would love to hear from you. You can call our commuter line. Let us know what you're seeing at 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Chloe. Well, we are live here in the riding of Winnipeg West. And why are we here? Well, because we're trying to get all around the city to different ridings where we are paying close attention to races. And we're watching this riding because it was quite close last time, and also because the boundaries have been redrawn. So remember, we were talking about Elmwood Transcona last week, and it was pushed out to Dugald. This riding is now pushed out into the arm of Rosser, so it's significantly larger. How large? Well, since the boundary changed, it is in 651 square kilometers of riding. There's voters from St. James, Charleswood, the arm of Headingley, and then, as I mentioned, it extends into Rosser. In 2015, they voted Liberal. and that was for Doug Elson, who'll join us after 8. In 2019, Doug Elson lost to the Conservative candidate Marty Morance. In 2022, Marty Morance won again. On election night, boy, it was tight, 44 votes. It prompted a recount. In the end, Marty Morance did win this riding by 460 votes. But fast forward to today, and both of them want the job back. So do, however, candidates from the New Democratic Party and the Green Party, and they unfortunately were unable to join us this morning. But Marty Morance joins us now. He's been the federal MP here, as I mentioned, since 2019. And overall, the vote margin here, back when you look previous elections for Marty Morance, was quite large and comfortable. Now, this was when it was the Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley riding, in case you're trying to remember what was that riding called before. He thinks he deserves a third term in office, though, so he's joined us live, and he's going to tell us why. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure.
So for listeners, I'm trying to start from scratch, because even though you're going for a third term, there may be people voting or listening that don't know you. So why do you want a third term as Conservative MP here in Winnipeg West?
Sure. Well, I've lived in this community since the late 1990s, raised my family here. I love this community. I was on City Council, some people will remember, from 2014 to 2018 as Mayor Bowman's Finance Chair and Public Works Chair. In 2019, I was honored to be selected to be our candidate in the then named riding of Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley. And I was reelected again in 21, and I'd like to continue with the great work we're doing on affordability and on crime and on trying to get this economy growing again so that young people in our society have a fair shot at the Canadian dream and seniors can afford their lives again.
In 2021, I was mentioning what must have been that stressful election night when it was close. In the end, though, you won by 460 votes. Why will this time be different in your view?
Well, you know, the issues are different. As I said, we are laser focused on making life affordable again. Seniors can't afford their lives. Young people can't afford their lives anymore. It wasn't like that in 2015. Now housing prices have doubled, rents have doubled, mortgage payments have doubled. It didn't have to be that way. It was because of a series of inflationary policies that were implemented by this Liberal government, by the way, advised by Mr. Trudeau's personal economic advisor, now Prime Minister Mark Carney, that resulted in widespread inflation that really made life unaffordable for Canadians. So that's why we're bringing in, for example, a series of tax cuts, including a 15% tax cut on the first income tax bracket. We're getting rid of the GST on new home builds, GST on cars manufactured in Canada to combat what's going on from the United States. So we're laser focused on making life affordable again for Canadians, and that's what we are doing.
What concerns are voters telling you are rising to the top for them when you're talking to people here in Winnipeg West? What are they saying to you at the door?
It is 100%. It's about affordability. It's also about crime, and we had actually a great announcement this week on crime, the 3 strikes and you're out policy, that somebody is convicted 3 times of a serious offense, they wouldn't be eligible for parole, probation, house arrest, and they would be a minimum sentence of 10 years. We also need to bring in bail reform to make sure that people get jail, not bail, and we're not dealing with this Liberal government's catch and release bail system anymore. So we need to keep criminals behind bars for longer. We certainly need to look at the root causes of crime, but these policies will make our community safer. I
was out in the riding for about 2 hours earlier this week just talking to voters. The issue of sovereignty, the issue of Donald Trump and the tariffs came up, no surprise to anyone running in this election. But some of the voters are really talking about, they're looking at the leaders of the parties. They're trying to figure out who's going to be best to take on Trump. Why do you believe that your leader, Pierre Poilievre, is the person?
Well, I worked with Pierre Poilievre shoulder to shoulder for 6 years now. We were on the Finance Committee together. I've never seen a more passionate, stronger debater and negotiator than Pierre Poilievre. The fact of the matter is that Donald Trump has said he wants Mark Carney to be Prime Minister because Donald Trump thinks he can push Mark Carney around. Remember, Donald Trump at his core is a real estate developer. He's been pushing bankers around for his entire career. He would like nothing better than to have a shot at negotiating a better deal for his country with Mark Carney than with Pierre Poilievre.
I'm going to pose a couple things that came up this morning from voters, and it's going to lead to a question here. So Ray Jones wrote in and said, will via Facebook, saying, will Marty Morance go with the Conservative Party or Canada Strong? And then we also have Rick, who came into the early this morning grabbing his coffee and said, recently Pierre Poilievre seems to be, in his view, Rick's view, friendlier towards President Trump and, in his view, the MAGA movement. Does Marty Morance's view align with Poilievre's? How would you deal with the threat from the United States? So these are folks that are not supporting your leader necessarily, but they want to know your view. Rick, by the way, is an undecided voter, and he's voted conservative in the past. So I think people are trying to understand where you align.
Yeah. Well, to Rick, I say thank you for your question, but Pierre Poilievre is nothing like Donald Trump. He's rational. And that is a very important point. Donald Trump has said in his public comments he doesn't think that the conservative leader in Canada is MAGA. What he did say was that he wants Mark Carney to be prime minister. He would rather deal with the Liberals because he knows he can cut a better deal. It would be sheer folly to put a prime minister in place that Donald Trump knows he'll be able to push around and get a better deal with than the conservative leader.
Harold also has a question, and this is on a different topic than has been raised. He does vote here in your riding. He's asking if your party would support a two-way arms embargo between Gaza and Israel.
Absolutely not. Canada has been a strong ally and friend of Israel. Israel is fighting an existential war for its existence. I voted against the March 18, 2024 motion that banned armed exports export permits to Israel, and I think that it was frankly shameful of the Liberals and the NDP to gang up on our friend and ally Israel as opposed to supporting them at the time that they need support from countries like Canada the most.
What are you hearing specific in the riding here? What do you want to, I guess I should ask, we've asked what you've heard at the door, but what do you want to accomplish here, Marty Morance, that you didn't get to when, in the 2 terms you held here previously?
You know what? I am looking forward to a conservative majority government so that we can get this country back on track. In 2015, our GDP on a per capita basis was in lockstep with the United States. Today, Canada is substantially poorer than the United States. It didn't have to be that way, but you can see it on the faces of people when I open the doors. They're worried about affording their lives. That's why we need to take steps to get our economy growing again. We said we'd get rid of that Bill C-69, the anti-resource development bill, the No More Pipelines bill. We said we would build a national energy corridor. We can't be reliant on the United States anymore. That relationship will never be the same. We need to stand on our own 2 feet. That means developing our natural gas, for example, and exporting it to the world to displace more carbon-intensive fuels like coal that are being used to generate power in other countries. That means building a national energy corridor. That means developing other trade relationships outside of this country. And, by the way, trading with the one country we should have been trading with all along, ourselves, by breaking down interprovincial trade barriers and actually being able to trade with other provinces more easily than we can trade with other countries.
7:47 a.m. We have with us in Winnipeg West here the incumbent, Marty Morance, the Conservative candidate here running for re-election on the 28th, and he's taking some of the questions you've written in and, of course, our questions here. I am curious, and you and I have known each other for a long time because you were city councillor and I've interviewed you many times. Why you agreed to join us today? And that's maybe not going to be a surprise that I'm asking you that, because many Conservative candidates across the country are choosing not to speak to the media. I'm wondering why you're here.
You know what? I've always had a great relationship with the media in this community, and I enjoy talking to you, and it gives me an opportunity to talk to thousands of people that I might not be able to talk to just going door to door every day about our great conservative policies, about the fact that we really care about making life more affordable for our seniors, for our young people. That, young people grew up, the Canadian dream was that if you worked hard and you went to school, you would be able to afford a nice home on a safe street and at least a similar standard of living to that which you grew up on. We are facing the first generation in our history that looks at that and says, I don't think I can attain that. That's not right. And that wasn't like that in 2015, and it won't be like that when a conservative government takes power and is looking out for young people in this country.
Are you facing pressure from the National Conservative campaign not to do interviews like this?
Not at all. No, not the slightest.
Okay, so you were free to make your decision to be here today.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm hoping future candidates will join us as well as we move around Winnipeg. If you are elected here on the 28th, what would you say to voters about why you deserve to be re-elected? What would you as a thought, if people have not plugged in and they're undecided, what would you say about why you're the right person to go with? Because you talked a lot about the policy and party, but you yourself.
You know what? I don't take any vote for granted. I will leave it to the voters to decide whether they deserve to re-elect me or not. They can look at my record. I have been a staunch defender of this community throughout my entire elected life. You can look at my record on City Council. You can look at my record as a Member of Parliament. It is all available in public online. And of course, I'm happy to talk to every constituent, but I have ultimate respect for the voters, and I will respect their decision.
And just as a last question, Marty Morance, I'm trying to slide in listener questions here in between the ones that we have as well. And equal time will be given exactly. I have a timer going. I have a minute left to each candidate with us today. Rhiannon Frost wrote into us on Facebook. She is asking, she wants to know why your party, what your party rather will do to protect the LGBTQ plus community. And she has some concerns about that.
You know what? There are a number of, I would call them tropes about Conservative Party that are simply untrue. We are staunch defenders of LGBTQ communities, and I have always been that way. We have in our caucus, for example, the deputy leader of the Conservative Party, Melissa Landsman, is a gay woman in a same-sex marriage. We have Eric Duncan. I was getting confused with our city councillor. Sorry, Evan. We have Eric Duncan, who single-handedly for 2 years fought the Liberals on the blood ban. I still think he's one of our caucus members from Ontario. I still think that the blood ban would be in place today if not for Eric Duncan.
Does your leader hurt you in this regard then? Because this question may be coming from Pierre Poilievre. There's a number of different interviews, but in one of them, I was watching it yesterday, he was saying, well, do you know of more than two genders? And he was leaning into the, two genders quite heavily, and then people were pushing back with some concerns about openness and acceptance.
Not at all. Pierre Poilievre is a pro-choice, pro-marriage equality politician. He's always said that, and that's the way he will govern. There will not be any policies in a Conservative government that would restrict rights in any way.
That's our time, Marty Morance. Good luck on the 28th. Thank you very much for giving us time on CBC.
Great.
That is Marty Morance. He is the Conservative candidate and incumbent here for Winnipeg West. Coming up after 8 o'clock, we will hear from the Liberal candidate here who's running, Doug Elson. Both NDP candidate Avery Selby-Lyons and Green Party candidate Dennis Biomi were unavailable to join us today. It is 8 minutes now to 8 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. And it is 2 degrees, mostly cloudy in the city, a high of 8. It's going to be misty and a chance of drizzle continues for us here in Winnipeg. Next on the program, are you feeling dizzy by all the talk of the tariffs? Will they or won't they? Donald Trump has put a 90-day pause in the latest round that were supposed to hit most nations. But Canada, here, we still face tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles. Now, to catch you up here, 2 weeks ago, Trump imposed that 25% tariff on all foreign vehicles imported into the States. The same tariff applied to car parts. Canada is imposing 25% retaliatory tariffs on U.S.-made vehicles, but so far no parts. What does all of this mean if you're trying to buy a car? George Eny is the director of Automobile Protection Association, and he's been doing interviews about cars for years. Hi, George.
Hello.
So tell me a little bit here, like which cars are impacted by these tariffs?
Well, there's a pause right now, but essentially we've got to determine whether you're talking about cars coming into Canada or cars going into the U.S. So most of the conversation has to do with cars that Americans will buy that are manufactured in Canada and what that means for Canada. So in that, it's a small number of models. Toyota has manufacturing in Canada, Honda, Chrysler, its minivan, and General Motors as well has some manufacturing here. So it's not a lot of different models of vehicles, but the concern is that it will make investment in future production very difficult to justify here. The concern for Canadians is what happens to vehicles that we buy. As a buyer of a car, it's one of the concerns. And for that, really, that's our government that determines that. So anything coming from Germany or Korea or Japan wouldn't be affected. I'm assuming that anything that comes from Mexico would also be tariff-free, and they export a lot of models. But there are some models that are made in the United States, and those could conceivably become more expensive if Canada maintains tariffs on them.
So for consumers, how expensive can we expect vehicles to get?
very difficult to make any predictions because we don't know where the eventual tariffs will land. If the current agreement that sees free trade between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. is maintained, then it's the situation that we have today, plus a little bit of uncertainty, which in the long run may increase prices. The U.S. has already imposed tariffs on some of the metals that go into cars, on aluminum and steel, and those will ultimately increase the price of new vehicles. Perhaps not fully this model year, but definitely by next September, it would be reflected in the prices. That could be $1,000 or $1,500 for a larger vehicle.
What if somebody here is wanting to boycott American-made cars? What are the options if you're looking for a Canadian-made vehicle?
Well, in that case, we have a website, list on the APA's website where you can check and see which models are made here. But even then, it's not an absolute boycott because some of the components that go into the vehicle could be made in the U.S. We have, to the benefit of Canada, what's called a fully integrated economy. So as far as car production is concerned, some parts that go into the car, large parts like the engine or transmission, could be made in Canada. Parts that are very labor-intensive, like, say, the wiring loom, which looks like spaghetti, which has all the different wires in the car all hooked up, would be made in Mexico because that's where labor is cheapest. Same with seat covers or vehicle interiors. And the final assembly could be in the U.S. So even a boycott is not a complete boycott for real. But if you'd want to, you could look at that small list, Honda Civic, Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, are vehicles that are made in Canada.
And just as a last question, what would you like to see the Canadian government do that maybe they haven't already by way of response?
Well, if we wish to maintain the nuisance tariffs on, certain kinds of imported alcohols or red state tariffs, which I'm told about, perhaps, definitely on vehicles, what we want to be moving toward is free trade, what we had already. That's the only way in the long run that Canada is a viable place to assemble vehicles in large quantities. Australia, which is in a market very similar in size and the type of vehicles people buy to Canada, closed its last assembly plant in 2017. The reason for that is that Australia alone was considered too small to be a place where you'd want to manufacture cars. The factories wouldn't be big enough the market isn't big enough to support a modern factory at the scale that it needs to operate. And when that plant closed, it wasn't only the car assembly that stopped, but also the parts assembly as well, which employs many more people.
All right, George, thank you very much for the analysis.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Ms. Georgini, the director of the Automobile Protection Association. 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now. You're on CBC. We are live in Winnipeg West. Heather Wells back in our news center on Portage Avenue, and she's got more updates on the headlines this Thursday morning.
Good morning. Well, a Brazilian man says he was forced to leave Canada after blowing the whistle on a Winnipegger illegally hiring foreign workers. Igor Santos says he gave authorities evidence that he and others had been misled into working at a local construction site without permits. He says he was applying for a valid work permit when a border agent told him he had to get out of the country. Payroll problems driving workers to the picket line. Frustrated healthcare support staff at Extendicare Personal Care Home on a day of action, angry over what they say are ongoing compensation issues with their employer's third-party payroll system. We'll hear more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather. Well, this gray day continues. We'll have a high of 8, mainly cloudy and drizzle through the day. If you have a problem on the commute, 788-3093. We've got no major issues out there right now. Well, our show continues live from Winnipeg West. This was a tight riding last time around. We're going to talk to the Liberal candidate here who has held this seat before, actually, back in 2019. And so Doug Elson joins us live here at Tim's, 3890 Grant Avenue, coming up after 8 o'clock. In addition, we're going to hear from some more voters here in Winnipeg West. We're going to hear Kathy Pope, who says she's very, very interested in the election. She just doesn't know who to vote for, and she would hope that some of the platforms will be more costed out. We're also going to hear more from some listener lines that came out with folks concerned about taxes and the cost of living and seniors. So stay with us. I'm Marcy Marcuso. We're on location as we lead into Election Day. Stay with us because World Report is next.
Today on Q.
If you're funny in one language, how do you know you're going to be funny in another one? Laval, Quebec's Rachid Badouri has conquered the French comedy world, and now he's looking at taking on the English comedy world. He'll be here to tell you about translating his jokes and the differences between French comedy and English comedy.
I've changed my setups, less talking, get more to the punchlines.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The next installment in our election road trip rolls into the 905 region. These are the suburbs surrounding Toronto. There are 30-plus ridings, and elections are often decided in this area. You'll hear conversations about the auto sector and more coming up on The Current.
I'm Marcia Young. Canada's federal election campaign is revealing a sharp divide in the way each party deals with the media. Most have taken a traditional approach. Media outlets, including the CBC, pay to have their reporters travel on the same bus or plane as the leader. But the Conservative Party decided not to bring reporters along. And as Tom Perry reports, that's not the only hurdle reporters have had to overcome.
Canada first for a change.
Thank you, everyone. We will now take questions from the floor.
Pierre Poilievre's campaign day usually starts with a speech unveiling some new policy, followed by a news conference.
Thank you very much. A very important question.
Poilievre usually takes just 4 questions, with Conservative Party staffers deciding which reporters get to ask.
Is that why you haven't got your security clearance?
That boiled over this week in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, when a reporter not handpicked by the party tried to shout a question.
Sorry, there's just a protester here. Go ahead.
It's a reporter trying to ask you a legitimate question.
David Coletto of Abacus Data isn't sure the Conservative strategy is working.
In this election, voters are increasingly looking for competence as one of the most important factors. And I think to demonstrate confidence, you have to have confidence that you can take any question that comes at you.
The Liberals, New Democrats, and Bloc Québécois all have reporters traveling on their campaigns with their news outlets footing the bill. Those reporters decide who asks questions, with the Liberals generally giving 15 to 20 minutes to national media and another 5 to local. It's added up to the other party leaders facing far more questions at their events than Poilievre, whose party vowed this would be one of the most accessible and transparent campaigns in recent memory. Tom Perry, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Liberals and the NDP are fighting to win a seat, any seat in Saskatchewan. The leaders of both parties touched down in Saskatoon last night, their planes parked next to each other on the tarmac. As Ashley Burke reports, they threw events in a riding they are both hoping to win.
We are in the Paris of the Prairies, thank God. This is amazing.
Liberal leader Mark Carney and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
Oh man, this is in some energy. We needed this energy.
Both rallying supporters in Saskatoon West within 2 kilometers of one another.
We got to send great Saskatchewan MPs to Ottawa, because let me tell you, I have lived in Ottawa a number of years and nothing happens in Ottawa.
The Liberals and NDP were both shut out of the province in the 2019 and 2021 elections. Now the parties are trying to change that and pick up Conservative seats.
Ottawa works best when one party doesn't have all the power. We've seen in our history the best things that have ever come out of our parliament have been when New Democrats have been there. Our universal health care, New Democrats.
Singh pitching the hope of a minority government by sending more NDP MPs to parliament. He's hoping to build on momentum that the NDP saw provincially in the fall election, as the Liberals try to solidify their strong support in polls across the Prairie provinces. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Saskatoon.
U.S. President Donald Trump is still waging a trade war, but instead of a broad one with tariffs targeting dozens of countries, Trump is now focused squarely on China. And this morning, Beijing is vowing to keep fighting back. A bitter trade dispute is shaping up between two superpowers. Patrick Falk has the latest on the Chinese government's response.
The warnings from China are consistent, if not repetitive. At a news briefing in Beijing today, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian reiterated that China didn't want to fight a trade war. But we will not fear when they come our way, he says. In a separate briefing, the Commerce Ministry acknowledged that the environment for trade was becoming increasingly challenging. But it also insisted the resilience of Chinese trade has not diminished. Markets in Asia rebounded strongly after the Trump administration offered a 90-day reprieve on tariffs against dozens of nations. Investors shrugged off uncertainty about how the fight between Washington and Beijing might play out, even as the U.S. notched its tariff rate against Chinese goods higher to 125%. And Goldman Sachs lowered its forecast for China's real gross domestic product growth from 4.5% to 4%. It says the substantial U.S. tariffs will significantly weigh on China's economy and labor market. Patrick Falk for CBC News, Singapore.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 150 Chinese citizens are fighting with Russia in the war against Ukraine.
Залучення ще й громадян Китаю у цю війну це точно.
He says the involvement of Chinese nationals with Chinese passports is inflaming the war, and it must be responded to in a principled manner. Earlier this week, Ukrainian troops captured 2 Chinese soldiers who were said to be fighting in the Donetsk region. Zelensky says they are cooperating with investigators, and he believes Russia is recruiting Chinese citizens on social media. Sudan has told the International Court of Justice that the United Arab Emirates is supporting genocide in the African country's civil war. The court is hearing the claim today. Khartoum says the UAE has been arming and funding the Rapid Support Forces fighting government forces. It accuses the RSF of killing non-Arab groups in the western Darfur region. The UAE denies that it is complicit. According to the United Nations, the 2-year-old civil war has killed more than 24,000 people. The artist in residence at the University of Prince Edward Island has quit. Christopher Griffin's U.S.-themed painting is proving controversial on campus. As Wayne Thibodeau reports, it's a parody of the famed Washington crossing the Delaware.
When my country was threatened by the government of the United States of America, I felt I had to do something.
Christopher Griffin's painting is a group of lemmings in a boat carrying an American flag.
I chose lemmings because they have the mythology of producing mass suicide by jumping over a cliff. And it seemed to me that the government of the United States was self-inflicting wounds.
The college says it prompted complaints, including from American faculty members. Griffin says he was given 2 options: take down the controversial painting or leave. He decided to quit.
I offered to do a talk and to explain why I thought this painting was relevant and important, and they declined to do that.
Dominique Griffin is the dean of the Atlantic Veterinary College, where the artwork was on display.
We do not intend to censor his work. We did express that he was welcome to continue his work, but just that an institute of higher education, especially one that focuses on veterinary science and animal health, was not the right venue for
Christopher Griffin says he just wanted to stand up for his country. He says the university is the perfect place to have this discussion.
I'm quite disturbed by what is going on. I love this country, and I want to do what I can.
Griffin says he doesn't wish any ill will on the university or its administration. He says it's just too bad it had to end this way. Wayne Thibodeau, CBC News, Charlottetown.
The number of Canadians venturing south to the U.S. is way down. Statistics Canada just released their latest numbers on cross-border travel. They show Canadians making road trips to the U.S. last month is down more than 30% from March of last year. That shift is hitting favorite snowboard destinations like Florida with a serious economic blow. Steve Futterman has that story.
70-year-old Laurie Fisher lives in Winnipeg, but has been coming to Florida every winter since he was 5.
What's going on now between Canada and the United States, from a Canadian point of view, is untenable.
Now he is going home. He sold his condo here in Clearwater and doesn't expect to come back.
I've talked to a lot of Canadians that have made the decision to leave.
And many who were thinking of coming are staying away.
Pretty large amount of Canadians are actually deciding to cancel their trips.
Robert Washington is a real estate broker in Tampa.
So I work with a lot of investors that own Airbnbs. One client said about 40% of his bookings were with Canadians. All of them canceled his trips.
All over Florida, businesses, especially hospitality businesses, are feeling the impact. In one spot, especially popular with Canadians.
Beautiful Dunedin, Florida, the site of the first spring training game of the Blue Jays.
In Dunedin, Canadians did show up for the Blue Jays preseason games, but the numbers seem to be smaller. And Don Daly, who runs a popular bar in Dunedin, says those that did show up went home very quickly when the games ended.
Yeah, I would say it was a significant drop-off over the past week. Usually people will stay around until after Easter, and it usually kind of tapers off slowly, but we felt a little bit of a significant drop just this past week.
The big question among those impacted is whether this is a one-year anomaly or possibly the new normal. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Clearwater, Florida.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Getting busy here at the Tims at 3890 Grant. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in Winnipeg West. Here's what some voters are saying here.
Yeah, I'll be going PC. Absolutely. I just feel like we've lost middle class and it's important to have more structure.
Well, it's kind of tough. I still haven't made my mind up yet.
Okay. Is that normal for you? Do you wait and decide?
I do wait. And I look at all parties, not just the top two that are, right now in the lead. I do look at NDP, Green Party, and stuff like that.
Well, those top two parties right now are the parties that have held this seat in Winnipeg West. In the last hour, we talked to the Conservative incumbent here, Marty Morance. This half hour live from the Tims, Doug Elson will join us. He is the Liberal candidate here in Winnipeg West. He's also previously held this seat in 2015, and last time around, he lost by 460 votes. Why does he think he could take it back for the Liberals this time? So we will find out. We will also hear from more voters here as well. We've had a whole bunch of different issues that have been on the table. Interesting riding here, not because just it was close, but also because it has been redrawn. So it now is going to include not just the neighborhoods like where we are today, St. James, Charleswood, and then deeper into the arm of Headingley. But this is also extending now this riding into the arm of Rosser as well. I want to mention that for all of our election remotes, CBC does extend invitations to all of the candidates. There are candidates on the ballot for Winnipeg West for the New Democratic Party and the Green Party, but either they were not able to join us this morning. The Green Party candidate Dennis Biomi and the NDP candidate is Avery Selby. Right now, it's time to go to the news center and find out what's happening in the headlines.
Good morning. Well, a Brazilian man who was working without a permit says he came to Winnipeg based on lies. Igor Santos says Gurwinder Singh Ahluwalia promised he and others would get work permits if they came to Canada to work at a construction site. Border Services told him to leave the country after he blew the whistle. Ahluwalia pleaded guilty. Santos says he was forced out, but the wrong people are still here. A recent surge in Canadian pride could soon be echoing through the Manitoba legislature. The opposition PCs say they will put forward a resolution today asking the House Rules Committee to require O Canada be sung before every sitting day of the Manitoba legislature. I'll be back with more news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Abby, it's brighter out the windows here at Tim's, but it's still, it's still kind of drizzly.
Yeah, we're still going to get that drizzle across most of the regions. Right now, Winnipeg, 2 degrees, mostly cloudy outside, trying to clear up. It looks like this light rain or drizzle will stay with us for most of the morning. Some fog patches that we started the day with clearing up already. The day's going to stay cool. We warm up to about 8 degrees. The winds will stay light, and then we'll see some clear conditions tonight, though the fog patches will be returning later tonight, and then tomorrow we start sunny and we warm up to that 15 that we're looking for. But right now, Winnipeg, 2 degrees. Expect a cool and cloudy day with a chance of drizzle off and on.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We did get a call on the listener line here, the commuter line specifically, sorry. And Chloe, what happened?
Yeah, we got a call from Lee just mentioning that westbound Marion very backed up right now between Lagimodiere and Archibald. So if westbound Marion is part of your commute and you would rather not wait, you can find a different route. Again, that's westbound Marion very backed up between Lagimodiere and Archibald. Thank you to Lee for that call on the commuter line. If you see anything that you would like your fellow commuters to know about, call us at 204-788-3093.
Well, these live shows always leading up to elections are democracy in action. And so we hear from candidates. We also hear from voters. And I just want to make a small correction. The NDP candidate is Avery Selby Lyons. I got the full name incorrect. And the Green Party candidate, Dennis Biomi. Neither of them were available to us this morning. But we did hear from the Conservative incumbent, Marty Morance, last half hour. And Doug Elson will speak with us in a moment for the Liberal Party. First, though, to the voters, it's your vote and it's going to be your decision who's going to win here and who's going to be the next Prime Minister. So earlier this week, I spent a couple hours in the riding just talking to people on the street here. And I talked to someone who's undecided, but she shared a sentiment I think that a lot of people across the country might be feeling in terms of how she described it, like a sense of urgency around trying to make the right decision for her. This is some of my conversation with Winnipeg West voter Kathy Pope. Hi, what's your full name?
Kathy Pope.
Nice to meet you. Do you vote in this area of Winnipeg and Winnipeg West?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. How long have you lived out here?
Like 8 years.
Okay, yeah. Do you know how you're voting in the upcoming election, Kathy?
I don't know yet, but we watch the news. We read everything. Every day we're figuring out who are we going to vote for. I don't know.
So tell me a little bit about maybe why you don't know or what you're reading for. Like, how are you weighing everything? What's important to you?
What's important to us? There's so many things that are important. Healthcare is important. Taxation is important. Balancing the budget is important. I don't know which party is the party that can take care of that. I kind of think they just get a certain amount of money to spend. I'd like to see them spend it wisely.
Got it. So you're really leaning in, it sounds like, to affordability issues. That's a lot of things you mentioned have to do with that bottom line.
Well, of course, every day we're listening to what's going on in the States, and that's important. It's important to be Canadian. I guess we always will be. I believe that. So I guess that's not really a factor because I just have faith that it's not a problem.
Got it. That no matter who ends up there, they're going to take care. They're going to, make sure that our country's not at risk.
I hope so. I hope so. It's hard to know who to vote for, though. I don't know. We had our daughter over the other night. We asked her, do you know who you're going to vote for? She said, I really don't know.
So do you have any questions for the candidate? Do you have anything you want to ask?
Well, I guess I would like to see a little more of an accounting of where all our tax money goes, because we give a lot and they spend a lot. And I'd like to see that they have to be a little more diligent with being careful of what they spend it on.
West voter Kathy Pope. One quick comment here. Bev came into Tim Hortons earlier and she's also undecided. She says she's thinking about who to vote for, though, quote, all the time, end quote. She's really worried about the threat from the U.S. she shared with CBC this morning. She said another big issue, though, for her is mental health and lack of support, in her view, for people who need it. And she just cited that outside the Tim's here this morning in this area in Winnipeg West, we're on Grant Avenue. She said she, for example, saw a houseless person outside right away this morning and was just sort of thinking about mental health issues that can lead to folks being homeless and such. So that's on her mind. It just speaks to the fact that in a federal election, of course, you're concerned about those big picture issues and global issues, but also it can come down to the streets of Winnipeg. Stay with us. We're live at the Tim's at 3890 Grant.
This election, your vote matters more than ever. CBC News is your go-to with real-time election tools, helping you make an informed decision. Use Vote Compass to find out which party is closest to your views. Compare election platforms from Canada's major parties with the Party Platform Tracker. And in the lead up to the election, find out where the polls stand with Poll Tracker. Because this is your vote. Canada Votes 2025. Visit cbcnews.ca or download the free CBC News app.
It is 8:18 right now. Well, the first time my next guest, Doug Elson, Liberal candidate here, ran for office in this riding Winnipeg West was in 2015. He was still known as Charleswood St. James. It was rather still known as Charleswood St. James Assiniboia Headingley. It's now been renamed. At the time, the emergency room doctor won the vote, so he hung up his stethoscope and he was the MP for close to 4 years. In 2019, he lost his seat to the Conservatives by quite a large margin, but he came back to for a rematch in 2021 and he lost by just 460 votes. So today this riding has been redrawn. It is larger. It includes the arm of Rosser, and it is now known as Winnipeg West. Liberal candidate Doug Elson is here to try to win again. Good morning. We're just going to get your mic on there. Good morning.
Good morning.
There you are. So for those that may not know you, I always start with this because I've met you many times, but tell me a little bit about yourself so listeners can understand, why you're running again.
Sure. I've been practicing medicine since 1994, emergency medicine, and in various hospitals around the city. I've worked at the Victoria, Seven Oaks, Health Sciences, and the Grace. I've basically see that the emergency department is really what many have called the canary in the coal mine of the social safety net and the health system. So I saw every aspect of what influences people's health, from medical illnesses and injury to just simply general policy, things like poverty, substance abuse, or substance use disorders, and problems with people who've been involved in the justice system and can't integrate. All of these things, all these people were my patients in dealing with all of these things. And I saw that there were, that I thought that my perspective as a physician, having seen all these things firsthand, could help influence some government policy.
We're going to compare and contrast what you're saying with your opponent, of course, Marty Morance. So I asked him last hour what he's hearing at the door here in Winnipeg West. What are you hearing at the door?
I'm hearing that people are concerned about Canada, about the future of Canada, about what's happening with our economy. I'm hearing about, affordability. I'm hearing a lot about the healthcare system.
What would you say to people who believe your party's had enough time to try to fix the concerns that they have? That it's been 10 years in power. Justin Trudeau, people weren't in favor of. Some people do feel like Mark Carney maybe won't be that different. Some are worried, thinking those that don't want, that don't, or considering voting Liberal, but they're not sure. Is Mark Carney, is he that different? He has been around supporting the Liberals. What would you say to people who are skeptical that your party can actually make the improvements they've been waiting for in certain areas?
Well, absolutely. There's two issues. First of all, Mark Carney is very experienced in managing the economy, and the economy, of course, is central to how everything in our society works. He's had very broad experience, running the Bank of England. They actually invited him to stay for another 2 years. His skill set was recognized actually by more than one party. The Conservatives years ago, wanted him to be their finance minister. So he's a respected voice with a skill set that I think can manage this climate. But what people it's easy to lose sight of when you're dealing with problems today. When you look at what's happening over the last 10 years, Canada has had unprecedented challenges. We had to deal with the first Trump presidency, who tore up our original free trade agreement. We had a once in a lifetime or once in a century pandemic that killed, and people don't realize this, COVID killed more Canadians than died in combat in World War II, and that paralyzed the economy.
But why bring up all of those things? Is it your way of saying it's been an unprecedented 10 years and the Liberals, is it not representative of how you feel the Liberals are going to handle things moving forward? Because we're still facing unprecedented
Well, of course,
things, right?
We're still facing unprecedented things, but what people don't understand with these unprecedented times, Canada came through the pandemic very well. We had one of the lowest mortalities in the world. We had a mortality that was 1/3 that the United States. That was all thanks to this government. We had the fastest economic recovery in the G7. And inflation that people talk about, we have the lowest inflation in the G7 and among the lower third in the world. These affordability issues are worldwide, and we're doing better than most in Canada under this government.
Let's get to some voter questions here for you. Voters in Winnipeg West have come to meet you and ask questions this morning. We have a mic set up, so we actually are going to invite Harold to the mic. Harold, can you give us your full name and ask your question of Doug Elson, the Liberal candidate, please?
Sure. My name is Harold Schuster, and my question to Doug is, will you support a full two-way arms embargo between Canada and Israel that would include not being able to send parts through the United States as a way to bypass that embargo?
Thank you for the question. Your response?
Well, thank you. Yeah, there is an embargo on new shipments of offensive weapons, but Israel has the right to defend itself. There is no embargo on any equipment regarding the ability of Israel to protect its own citizens. The Iron Dome, there's no embargo that's going to affect that. They must have the right to protect themselves and their citizens. As for parts that go through the United States, that is again a much more complicated issue that I needs to be dealt with at a level that I don't understand how this can be done. I would like to see an embargo include anything going through the United States for offensive weapons, and again, part of any embargo as well. We're honoring any contracts made before October 7th because there's just the logistics of trying to cancel those now are pretty much insurmountable.
Thank you for the answer and for responding. Thank you for the question. We have another question. We have Jason Carter here, who, you've actually written to us with a number of questions, Jason, so I'm not sure which one you want to pose to the Liberal candidate.
I think the most important question...
Just get you to pull up to the mic a little bit more, sir. Thank you.
Hi. I think the most important question at this point is about the carbon tax here. We've seen a successful program by the Conservatives to axe the tax, and we've seen a wave of climate denialism in the U.S., and we've seen the Liberals basically agree that the carbon tax program was way too complex for the consumers. So what's going to replace it? I mean, we also know that what happens on our individual level, on the microeconomic level, influences what happens in the macro and national level, especially for climate activism. So what is a program for both the national parties and for the regional parties, especially here, where our boundaries of this riding have expanded so much to include both urban and rural situations?
So thank you for the question, Jason. What can you share with us about your Liberal Party's point of view and also about your view on, as Jason pointed out, quite rightly, tax, carbon tax is axed, even though, the Liberals ran on it for years, talking about it as pulling out the stats about why it's necessary and it's an important program. What will replace it?
Prime Minister Carney has stated he wants to put a price on the large companies that are making the pollution. Because we have to be committed to climate action. We have international treaties stating that we have to do that. It's an unfortunate reality that the stats, as you say, did show the carbon tax was effective. Unfortunately, it was a victim of very bad communications in that most people just didn't understand it. And the best policy, and that should have been explained before it was rolled out. I would put the blame for that on us. But I think had it been properly explained beforehand, so people understood the program beforehand, it might have been better understood by the population. But the best policy in the world is going to fail if the populace is turned against it.
Well, but the Liberals have turned against it. So whether this is sort of then I think listeners might need to understand if your party feels it's a great policy. There's a lot of folks out there that would say that your party's cut this tax, but they're secretly going to bring it back after. So is that the case, or what will it be replaced with?
Well, it will be replaced with a tax on the large polluters, the companies that are, putting out large amounts of emissions, and saying, you will control your emissions, or there will be some taxation or some sort of financial incentive or financial penalty for not doing that. Okay, and that's where it needs to be doing, as opposed to at the individual household level.
Got it. I want to ask you, and just turn back to Winnipeg West in this riding. It's the same question I asked the incumbent Marty Morance in the last hour. We've been talking big picture, but here in Winnipeg West, what do you think the biggest concerns are, and why you're the right person to represent the people here?
Well, one of the biggest concerns people are worried about is our health system. People want to preserve our universal medical care system.
Does that mean that you, and because you already elaborated on that, and you are an ER doctor rather, is that something you'll fight for in terms of, because at the federal level that looks like more transfers, because the provincial jurisdiction is health. So at the federal level, what does that look like in terms of what you'll fight for in Ottawa?
Well, what I'll fight for is more making sure that the money is actually spent on health care. Right now, a lot of provinces have been receiving money, and one constituent mentioned mental health. In our first budget, we had a large amount of money that was devoted solely for mental health. The province of Manitoba, under Premier Pallister, pushed back against that. He said, you don't get to tell us how to spend this money. This is Manitoba's money. We will do what we want. We need to put more mechanisms that we can actually enforce how money is spent, so that when a province receives healthcare transfers, they spend it on healthcare and they can verify it was properly spent.
Thank you very much. I'm really mindful of time here, and we're right on equal time for each candidate. Good luck on the 28th. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
That is the Liberal candidate, Doug Elson, for here in Winnipeg West. We did hear from Conservative incumbent Marty Morance, NDP candidate Avery Selby-Lyons, and Green Party candidate Dennis Biomi were unavailable to us this morning, but they are on the ballot. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in Winnipeg West, and I know a lot of you have been writing in and answering with different questions. I'll just remind you that your candidates in this race, not just here in Winnipeg West, but across Manitoba, there's access. They have information out there. They have websites. They have emails. So I encourage you to get involved and ask your questions, whether or not you make it out to one of our special broadcasts or not. And stay with us, because we still have a little time left in our show. Right now, though, it's time for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 2 degrees, still cloudy. The showers have ended for now, but we could see them return through the day. A cool one with a high of 8. A Brazilian man says he was forced to leave Canada after blowing the whistle on a Winnipegger illegally hiring foreign workers. Igor Santos says he gave authorities evidence he and others had been misled into working at a local construction site without permits. Santos was applying for a valid work permit when a border agent told him he had to get out of the country.
As soon as he actually just kicked me out of Canada, I honestly, I wanted to cry. Again, I was just working, not because I wanted to. I knew I was illegal. I was not feeling comfortable. But again, I left everything behind. I left my college. I left my life.
Gurwinder Singh Ahluwalia pleaded guilty to unauthorized employment of foreign nationals last week. The prosecution said at least 14 foreign nationals had been illegally working at that construction site. Frustration on the picket line.
Pay us right! Pay us right!
Healthcare support workers from Extendicare personal care homes in Manitoba picketing in Winnipeg yesterday over their employer's third-party payroll system. Their union, CUPE, says workers have experienced compensation issues ever since Extendicare adopted the payroll system 2 years ago. Dietary staff, healthcare aides, and housekeepers were among those raising their voices outside Tuxedo Villa personal care home on Corridon. May Quinto, a longtime healthcare aide, represents the facility's healthcare support staff.
They are frustrated. Like every paycheck, they need to go file a payroll inquiry because they're missing some hours of their pay.
In an email to CBC News, Extendicare apologized to the workers for any discrepancies, saying base pay for regular hours worked had not been impacted. Extendicare says it's created a dedicated team to deal with mistakes, adding it is working with the union. Canada's main political party leaders will fan out across the country today for Day 19 of the federal election campaign. The Greater Toronto area will host visits by the two frontrunners. Liberal leader Mark Carney will be in Brampton and Hamilton. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre will be in Milton and then Raleigh, northeast of Kitchener. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will be in Saskatoon. China is not backing down from Donald Trump's latest salvo in the trade war. The U.S. president hit Beijing with a 125% tariff in reaction to China imposing an 84% duty on U.S. imports. This morning, Beijing says China will continue to the end. Existing tariffs on Canada are still in place. That includes Donald Trump's fentanyl-related levies, as well as the tariffs on the auto sector, steel, aluminum, potash, and energy. In response, Canada's retaliatory tariffs are still on the books. As for the European Union, it's pausing its tariff response, saying it hopes it can negotiate a permanent, long-term solution. Statistics Canada reports this morning a steep drop in the number of Canadians visiting the United States last month. StatsCan says the number of Canadians driving to the U.S. was down by more than 31% compared to March of last year. As for Canadians traveling by air, it is a 13% drop. The numbers include both one-day visits and extended stays. It is the second consecutive month the numbers are down. Manitoba's official opposition wants to make this a daily ritual at the legislature.
Oh, Canada, our home and nation.
The anthem being heard at Sunday's Rally for Canada. The Progressive Conservatives plan to put forward a resolution today asking the House Rules Committee to require a singing of O Canada before every sitting day at the legislature. Interim PC leader Wayne Iwasko calls it a permanent symbol of collective Canadian pride.
With the daily onslaught of the U.S. and Chinese tariffs, it is important that we all recognize the important things that make us Canadian and part of the Commonwealth. It's important that we educate our children and the youth on our Canadian history, our traditions, and our heritage.
The NDP hasn't said whether it will support the resolution, but ultimately it will be up to the Rules Committee to decide. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you very much, Heather, for the morning.
Thank you.
I want to mention we've been in Winnipeg West live this morning. Huge thanks to the folks at Tim's at 3890 Grant. Really appreciate you having us here and the candidates, people coming in for question, those that have been writing. Next week, we are also going to be at a Tim's. We're out in Winnipeg South, that riding, and that's Killarney and Pembina, the Tim's. We have been there in past elections. We're going to be there again. Federally, though, why are we there in that riding? Well, we've chosen it because that's one of those interesting local ridings where the vote has gone to different parties, and the way the vote goes statistically in Winnipeg South is usually how the government goes federally. So it's one of those places in the city, and we're going to talk to voters there and hear from candidates. So that's next Thursday. We do have a final look at the commute this morning with Chloe Friesen, and she's here on location with us. Hi.
Good morning. We've gotten a couple calls here. Lee called to say that westbound Marion, very backed up. This is between Lagimodiere and Archibald. As well, northbound Keewatin at Selkirk, there is a stalled transit bus in your median lane. Lastly, northbound Pembina at Stafford, you're down to one lane. Expect some delays. Thank you to everyone who called the commuter line this morning.
All right, Abby, weather.
A mix of cloudy conditions and light drizzle. Foggy conditions will clear throughout the day, and we'll see highs close to 10 degrees in most of the regions.
Big thanks to you, Abby Adeyemi, May McKillop, and Brad Lilly's all in our control room today. Thank you all. Really appreciate you. Big thanks to our producer for the show this morning. Donna Carrero puts together our election remotes. In our news department, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, and Aaron Broman. As well, overall in our unit of current affairs, Nellie Gonzalez is the show's producer. Leif Larson is the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Take care, be well, everyone. My name is Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. Get out and vote on the 28th. Make your choice, and remember, we have more election coverage in the days and weeks ahead as we get closer to Election Day. Stay tuned. The Current's coming up next.